Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right. We're here. Welcome, everybody. How's it going? I hope you're having a wonderful Monday so far. We're streaming in the daytime, and I'm really excited about this show. It's going to be awesome. We are streaming on YouTube. We are live in our Facebook group, and we are also on Rockfin. I want to shout out to my friends at Content Safe. They distribute all this stuff. So once it's live, it's going to be on Odyssey, it's going to be on Rumble and BitChute and some of those other platforms. So if that's where you're at, much love out there to you guys. We can only stream at like 3 at a time, I think, or something like that. But I want to appreciate every single person for being here. Thank you so much. I have an awesome guest, and we have an awesome conversation. Sean and I have been in contact for probably over a year or so, off and on.
About that.
Yeah, something like that. And so part of a larger group of people who I think are amazing, and we're connected. We have a lot of mutual friends and people in common. You and I have had some really cool just one-on-one conversations and been able to chat. And and what we've found out has been that we've had a lot of parallel experiences, which is trippy as hell.
It is. The more we talk, the more it's like, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Right. So it's been really cool getting to know you and talking about some of those things and what we've had in common. And we talked a little bit last week about this stream. And one of the things that you have been talking about, and some of the other folks in your circle, is imperturbability, which is a big, awesome word. I love it. It's hard to spell.
It is.
But I was surprised when I didn't get like the dots underneath, because I'm like, okay, I'm just going to give this shit a whirl. But it's a bigger word. I'd love to hear how you might define it, like what you think that word sort of embodies.
Yeah. And imperturbability to me is I guess the inside core definition is like, if you have a feeling, but you don't allow any kind of noticeable reaction outside of yourself. Something happens and it hurts you, it offends you, makes you angry. I would even include it into joyfulness and excitement and happiness. Like, say if you were the guy that's maybe going to land me $100,000 contract for something, when I get the yes answer and it green lights, if I can keep that chill, calm, same demeanor as if I'm not even excited at all, like you're not even sure, to me, that's imperturbability. Same thing if you say something that really makes me mad or sad or angry or disappointed. If it glances off and the person can't be 100% sure what they're looking at, this guy's got it's kind of like having a really good poker face. But to me, it's about being the observer of, the goal to me is to always be the observer and not the actor, to try to realize that I'm allowed to observe what I'm doing at all times. And I can choose carefully every single thing that I allow to be presented as a reaction. Now, I can't necessarily control the internal reaction. If you tell me, hey, Sean, I got you the $100,000 contract, I'm going to be like a giddy little kid, shaking my booty and dancing around in a circle and throwing my drink over my shoulder. But if I can keep that private, that it's just for me and God, and then decide that decision point. To me, that's the main thing. And the other, I like to call it, if people want to be a little more crass, you can call it unfuckwithability, right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Just you're not able to be fucked with,
Yeah, I love that. I think that's perfect. I think that is like sort of the skill. That's the primary and one of the most important things, as we go through this like spirituality, kind of trying to manifest your destiny, depending on, to what level, but like first and foremost, awareness, being aware of ourselves and our emotions. Cause I believe we're constantly communicating with the universe. And the way that we do that is through our emotions, 1000%. That's why we go through all this stuff, and why we want to do this type of work is to open up more space, and through becoming more the observer, becoming more imperturbable, we're less shook, less fuckwithable. And then we can continue on and continue to like gain traction, gain momentum, improve, do better,
right?
As opposed to self-destructing, which is really, really easy to do, like emotionally, if one bad thing happens, it's so easy to just completely come undone and unravel. It's like, you like a pinata.
I used to do it all the time. And then I increased my self-awareness, and it's like, oh, I'm sabotaging myself.
Yes.
I'm overreacting. I'm causing things to be harder than they need to be, for not just for me, but for other people. And so then to unravel that and start to turn it around, it does. If people aren't fully on the path yet, the reason you get hooked and sucked into this kind of thing is because you get a little taste of it, and it literally seems like magic. You lose your job, you don't know what's going to happen. You think you're going to get kicked out of your house. The worst thing you could imagine happens, and you're able to field it in a heart and a head way that's okay. And then all of a sudden, like the set drops out and a huge door opens up, and you're like, whoa, like, okay, so then you start wanting that to happen. So you try to make it happen. And then that doesn't really work. So you're like, no, that's not what I was doing. I was not giving a damn either way. And that's a big part of I learned how to be a release coach from Beth Martins. She's a great coach. I highly recommend Beth's work in any capacity, whatever she's got free, going on the King Heroes Journey podcast, all the way up to signing up for one-on-one. I can't recommend her enough. And I see her, we do have a very friendly, good relationship, but she's like my coach and my colleague that's taught me, how to put a bunch of these things I already had into a system that she learned and then developed even further. And I would say that thing we were talking about of figuring out whether it's wanting or not wanting, they call it attachments or aversions. Whether you're really attached to an idea, you really want to get a better job, or you really want to get the girl or the Porsche or whatever it is, spiritual enlightenment for those people that are less materialistic, right? Or the thing you really don't want, you don't want a divorce, you don't want to lose your house, you don't want to lose your job, you don't want to take a particular type of medicine, et cetera, if you can notice that that's happening, that you're attached or averted, and then use techniques to bring yourself to where you're okay either way, but you still do have what I call a 1 or 2% preference. Like if I can bring myself back to full center using breathing and other techniques, what release is the one I use. But honestly, as we've talked about, man, these paths all conjoin behind the scenes. You get past the facade on a bunch of these systems. I'd say all of them so far. I haven't found one that's the same thing. It's all the same thing. It comes down to obtaining this imperturbable feeling through surrender, really. And
yeah,
it's hard. It sounds easy. It sounds real. Okay, that's it, guys. Wrap it up. Let's close this thing up. That's it. Now yeah, right. But no, it's so much harder than that.
Yeah.
But if you can get to that 2% waiver, like I really do prefer to have the $100,000 grant come my way, for example. But I go through the whole process, get my breathing, become aware of myself, bring it down. Like, okay, there's a good chance I'm not going to get it, and I'm okay with that. There's also a good chance I am going to get it, and I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that's the hardest part people struggle with, is they don't understand to let go of wanting it, the excitement that you feel that you're close to what you want, to let that go, that's, to me, that's the truly uncharted waters, because it's easy to want to let go of negative outcomes, you know, especially if you realize wanting to avoid them is causing them to happen. As we
Right.
all know,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
if you're afraid to hit the deer,
yeah.
there's a better chance you're going to hit the deer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's hard when the deer's in the headlights to decide that it's okay to hit the deer, you know. That's not a good feeling. But a
No,
lot of the time, that'll cause them to step out of the road.
yeah, no, it's crazy. No, the emotion, it's crazy seeing that happen, right? Like the thing that
Yeah.
you fear most or don't want to have happen, like you're actively bringing that to you too. Like whatever that agreement is, soul and mind, the polarity that we are, it's like the things that I want the least and the things that I truly do want, like it's easy for me to agree, you know, through both hemispheres that I definitely don't want that. And I definitely do want this. And
Right.
ironically, whichever we focus and shift on the most, that's the one that we're actively drawing toward ourselves and
Right.
moving toward at the same time, right? So it's like you know, being aware of that. But like you said, you know, it's easier said than done. I would love to actually touch on some of the release stuff and how that relates and can be helpful to being able to be imperturbable. We can obviously start with attention and where our attention goes, but I think there's also some limiting factors that are emotional variables that are trained in us that become, you know, maybe they stem from trauma, maybe they stem from situations where we've had bad times in the past, something
Yeah.
negative, for instance, happened to us, like you didn't make the basketball team or somebody
Right.
broke
Or
up
even
with
just the
you.
fact that we're exposed to so much conditioning one way or the other, whether it's through your family, through media, through religion, you know, all these things are conditioning us. And so it's to me, it's an increased roboticism across the board, right? Like if people study Gurdjieff, you know,
Mm.
that's the thing that's why I try to, you know, like even right now, like I'm trying to allow myself to observe myself doing this with you and not get sucked in. Like, okay, and then I stop thinking about it. And there's some version of robot Sean that wants to jump in here and do something different. That I'm trying to allow that not to happen. You know, and the first the first book that I mean, it might not be the very first, but the one that really put a light on over my head just now. There's a man named Anthony DeMello, and he wrote a book called Awareness. And I think it was Miguel Connor from Aeon Byte. He mentioned it somewhere. I have this habit of people mention books, and I'll just immediately go buy it on Audible. Like I could listen to a podcast halfway and just take a book recommendation from it and never go back. And then that book changed my life forever. And you know, and I've listened to lots of Miguel's work, but um, the the audio book is beautiful for the Anthony DeMello book because he's just lecturing to various groups. You know, I don't even know what it was from, but it's not someone reading it like you've done with your good audiobook works. It's him standing in an audience lecturing and even fielding a few questions, and they've chopped that up with somebody queuing in intermissions as a
Okay.
narrator. And so you get the real vibe, and he's got a really good personality and a hilarious sense of humor, but he gives you these steps and it seems so stupid. Like, you got to be kidding me. Here's the steps. Okay. So the steps are: notice that you're having some kind of uncomfortable feeling, you know, and I would expand that to even include super overly affirmative feelings. If you talk to a used car salesman, he'll tell you, you know, if someone's really excited to buy the car, there's a good chance they're not going to make the sale, you know, like if they're like, yeah, this is the one I want, you know, there's a chance that energy it's not going to roll to an actual sale. So I would
Mm.
include that, you know. But he said with negative feelings are the easiest ones to notice, you know. If you're already in line at the post office, it kind of sucks. Now somebody steps on your shoe, you notice immediately you got some negative feelings coming up, you know. And then so his next step was to recognize that is all inside of you, and that any feeling that you had, let's use the stepped on your foot example. Say it's a woman in high heels and it actually kind of hurts, or it smudges up your nice Nikes or whatever, you know. Um, the feelings that come from that, his second step are to remember that that's all literally coming from inside of you, and that it really doesn't have anything to do with the woman stepping on your foot or whatever experience it is. You know, maybe you got one relative at Thanksgiving dinner, you know that they're going to quote unquote, they're going to make you angry, you know. But the truth is that you have complete power to not be angered. And it's also the feeling, it's not happening outside of you. You know, somebody steps on your shoe, they mess up your new shoes, it hurts your foot a little bit. you can actually have huge love, compassion, and happiness about that if you are practiced. But if not, then you have a reaction. You fall into a more robotic state. So then the third step was to notice if you're identifying with it. Now, another way to say that is to take it personally or to identify with it. That's the main thing for me, is to realize it's hard for me to let go of, say, being a rock and roll musician or being an artist, but I work on that stuff, like literally let go of the idea that I am an artist. Like, well, when I say I am and add anything at all to it, in my opinion, you're limiting your true self somehow. Right. And now that's deep philosophy. That's a deep philosophical level to go there. Most people aren't ready to let go of their attachments. But in the shoe stepping situation, it's easy because your foot is attached to the bottom of your body. The shoe that you bought is nice and it's something you like. And so you're attached. You're attached to your nice shoes that maybe you dropped $180 on. You're definitely attached to your right or left foot. If it hurts, you notice right away, Sure. And so it's hard to say, that's not me. The body's not me. The shoe's not me. Whatever attachment to them, I can let it go. And that's really the whole process. He said the last step is to just realize that that's the process of increasing awareness and waking up, and to constantly be practicing this. So I learned that first, and I started practicing. I felt like it was God foreshadowing in my life, because I'm working on this. Like, hey, this works, And I started using it. In the book, he says, you'll be successful at this because you'll find there's people that you're avoiding in your life. And once you get better at this technique, you'll find yourself intentionally bringing yourself into situations with those people to see how it works. Does my grumpy aunt who has her head up her ass piss me off at Thanksgiving or not? Well, I'm actually going to go this year and prompt the conversation and see what happens, see if I can be imperturbable or not, And so the work with Beth, what Beth did, Owen, is she came down with cancer and was pretty much given a death diagnosis. They sent her home to die, and she had learned this technique, and so she went home and found that through the practice of the release method that she learned, the man who invented it is named Lester Levinson, and the most popular book of his technique is called the Sedona Method, which one of his students wrote. And it's very popular. It's well known all over the world. Lots of people practice it. And it's a very similar thing. You go through this process of identifying whatever feelings are coming up, and just interviewing yourself in a process of whether or not, asking yourself honestly whether or not you can let it go. And it's really almost as simple as the other thing. You notice something's come up. You do kind of have to memorize the scale of emotion, and a lot of people are familiar with that. But even if you don't have it memorized, everybody knows what feeling they have. Like sometimes you do a show like this and you have a feeling of anxiety beforehand. Now, I didn't this time. I felt very comfortable, but sometimes you feel like, oh, like, you be your stage performer, so if you do stand up, it doesn't have to be that you always have butterflies the same way. Sometimes you feel completely flat, even though all day you feel good. And that could give you I don't have there's no lead up energy. Or you could feel really good beforehand, and right at the minute you're about to hit the mic, you go, there's something here. There's some feeling here, So to recognize it. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Or it's an impending sense of doom, like where it's like, this is not going to go well. And it is not going to go well, but what is the option? You just go up there anyway.
Right. You could bail.
Yeah, you could bail.
But you don't have to. That happened to me, actually. We went to a birthday dinner for a nice lady I know, and then out to the Nutcracker. And as I was getting my outfit picked out, I had that feeling like impending doom, and it's like, this sucks, because I want to go have a nice time. And the restaurant completely botched our stuff. I don't eat meat and cheese, and so they just brought me a side of vegetables. It was actually cooked in butter, which is something I usually wouldn't eat, but I just they got us late. We got to the Nutcracker late, and so I had that feeling, and as I was checking out my outfit, I was going through the exact process we're talking about. Like, all right, well, can you welcome it? That's that's one of the steps. Can you welcome the feeling? Now, that's, to me, if all people take away from this type of thing is to choose one thing and start practicing it, is so helpful. I can't say enough. I want to jump up and do a backflip to show you how excited I am. If all you can do is welcome whatever is actually happening, then that's like a huge hurdle jump towards imperturbability, because we want shit to go away. We want shit to change. We have a lust or a desire or wanting for things to be whatever they're supposed to be next. If something's bad, you want it to be good. If something's good, you want it to last. And and if you can accept and welcome wherever things are, to me, that's really the main. That's like the verb of the whole thing, is the welcoming process.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love what you're talking about. It's like, once you get a knack for this, once you can kind of walk instead of crawl, you start to test your triggers. I love that you just mentioned Gurdjieff too, because I'm currently working on a whole series, actually, just short videos on Gurdjieff's philosophy. Actually,
I'll be excited to look at that.
Yeah, it's coming out this week.
I mean, Gurdjieff and Ospensky technically is where I started before the Anthony DeMello awareness book. And so, because I never hunker down and really, this work with Beth Martins is the only thing I've dedicated myself to 100% in a long time. I'm one of these smorgasbord guys that's got the ADHD, and I'm doing everything all at once. And I've even started to welcome and accept the idea that I'm not going to have a focus. I'm not going to get it done, quote unquote. I'm not going to do even the thing I really want to do. I may not succeed in bringing it to fruition because I got this going on and that going on. And, it's just part of my personality, part of my life,
I think that's part of just exploring too. And you got to have that, like, you got to be able to explore, because when you do find something that you're like, okay, I'm doubling down on this, then it's real easy to know. For me, it was that way. And I'm looking toward doing that again, and this is such a perfect topic for me right now to be talking about this, because I've been kind of just emotionally kind of blah, I hit a deer a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I forgot you said that. That's
I did. Totaled my car, right? And then I bombed so hard on Friday night. I actually had a really good set. My first set Friday night was fun. I was enjoying myself. The second set, it was that impending doom, maybe even rock bottom as far as as far as a performance goes, just so flat. And a buddy of mine was there, and that just makes it even worse,
Of course, yeah.
But a great opportunity to be like, okay, well, the way I felt after that, I don't want that again. So it's time to, it's time to because there's a lot of different kind of ways to exercise. If you're doing open mics, or if you're doing, comedy like that, where you're kind of building material and you're failing kind of on purpose anyway. There's an extent of that, but when everybody has a crushing tight set, and then you go up and you're like, oh boy, I'm not,
this is on.
This is still, this is not worked through. And here we are. I was, but it's funny because I've been trying to go up and just not completely go blank and just start talking with nothing in mind, but shifting through things that I've built, like certain
fallback positions.
Right. I'm like, all right, I don't know what I'm going to talk about when I'm up there. But I've got a few different things that I have that I should be able to pull up in the moment, right? Testing myself to be present and throwing that stuff out there on, based on reading the audience and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
changing levels.
Yeah, it's a completely different skill, right? There's all these different things where there's crowd work, or just saying something, calling the room, they would say, where it's I walk up and I say what's going on, what the overwhelming vibe is in the room, or something about the room that usually brings people in. So that's another skill. There's all these different things. But being imperturbable, it's like the car thing. Well, I loved my car. It was a great car. But what's really cool about it is I get to choose whatever car. I'm going to get my dream car at this point. I'm going to get something that I really, will suit me and have all the things in it that I want. Well, as I'm going and driving all these different cars, I'm learning that what I thought I might like isn't necessarily what I like.
That's a big part of why it's good to let go of your wants. That's the way they phrase it in release work, right? That you identify that you have a wanting feeling about something, and then you interview yourself through a process of identifying where the feeling is on the scale of emotion, where the feeling is maybe in the body. It's in your throat, it's in your chest, it's in your gut, and then to ask yourself honestly if you can let it go and accept either answer. And that's the trickiest piece. If people are going to study this stuff, that's if someone would tell you in advance that that's the trickiest piece, because what you do is you end up learning how to give yourself subtle passive aggressive commands and then be disappointed when you can't accommodate. And that's not really the technique, right?
Right.
Like,
No.
you want to, like, if you know, can you let go of blank, and your overwhelming physical feeling and reaction and your emotional reaction is no. And if you accept that, you still get the feeling of release, not quite the same as if you could say yes. You know, if you're really angry and you ask yourself, can I just let this go? Sometimes it's that simple. I've seen whole situations improve in the kitchen or wherever just through that. Someone asks the other person, can you just fucking drop it? And they say, yeah, I could drop it. And then the vibe changes. That's, you know, that's a good example of the release. Well, if the person says no, everybody gets their hackles up, right? No, you're not going to drop it. And we still have to work through this anyway. But as an individual, you can find a different type, like a mild, it's back to acceptance, accepting and welcoming where you really are. If the true feeling is, no, I'm not letting this go right now, then I'm going to welcome it. Okay. Whatever this feeling is, I'm going to keep it then. I'm going to have it. And that's funny because that process of interviewing yourself, a lot of the time, it won't even take 2 minutes and you'll switch the whole thing around. I'll ask myself, so you're angry? Yeah. Can you let it go? No, I can't. I'm angry. It's like, okay, cool. You want to keep it? How long you want to keep it? You know, you want to see if we can keep this level of anger for what, 2-3 hours? And you're like, no. Like, all right, good. How long do you want to keep it then? You know, you want to keep it up for 5 minutes? Like, no, I don't want it. It's like, oh, hey, it's going away. Cool. You know, so it's like an end around. Like, you can do a U-turn on yourself by welcoming the feeling. And
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's brilliant. Like, I'm listening to Steve Martin talk about comedy, and he's talking about he's like, I wasn't that funny. I couldn't really sing. I couldn't really dance. He's like, but I could pretend to dance, and that was funny. I could pretend to sing, and that was funny. So I found a workaround. And kind of with the interviewing yourself, like, what a great workaround. Like, how long do I want to be mad about this?
Right. It's so a great question.
It is.
And especially if you give yourself, I mean, one of my best strategies for resolving conflict my whole life long, and I don't even know where I learned it, but I think it's because I have the natural thing to escalate. You know, like people say, oh, some people are passive aggressive. I've always been aggressive. If I'm being passive aggressive, we're all in danger. Because that's not my thing, man. I'm straight up. Like, I don't like you. I don't want to be in the same room with you. I'm not gonna work around it. I'm just gonna tell you. Like, so if we're gonna be here, let's just put it out there, you know. You probably don't like me either, and that's good. I don't like you, so I don't want you liking me, you know.
Right.
Like that,
That's so
but
good.
if you escalate, usually you can I did it to manipulate other people when I was younger, you know. I kinda wrecked my whole life, probably 2013. Like, I had a really bad, codependent, weird, toxic thing going on. I had a lady I was with for 7 years. We had 2 kids together, and the whole thing just went to shit in the worst possible way, you know? Like, I mean, nobody died or went to prison or ended up in the loony bin, but we were close, you know. It was bad. And way back then, to get everything done, I imagined back then that version of Sean thought that I was the shit. I'm going to get shit done. You should fall in behind me or partner up with me, or you should get the hell out of my way, because we're going to command and control this whole thing. And, you know, that really worked to some degree effectively. Like, lots of people are that way, you know. The command and control is a good way to describe it. We all know command and control, type A personality people. And so I used to use escalation as a way to get people to opt in or out, you know. Because they'd give me some hint or point of where they're at. And that's just what, like what Ye's doing on all these interviews, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to escalate all the way to Hitler. Take it to Hitler. Well, I mean, you know, in the realm that we were born into, that's the top of the mark. You can't really use a worse example.
No, you can't.
Of a human being in the world.
Right.
And so if you go from wherever you know people are all the way to Hitler, then people almost have to back off, you know. And
it's expanding that Overton window. So for anybody who doesn't know, and we have our own sort of Overton windows too, right? And that's a
good point.
This is kind of what gets really interesting. And when you talk about like NLP, like Paranoid American's great on that, but like we have these triggers embedded in us from a very young age, like all these different things, like whether it be from Disney movies or our parents or our teachers or whatever, but we have our own sort of little Overton window, what we will allow in our awareness and what will truly trigger us. And as we're talking about imperturbability, I mean, we're talking about really fortifying, what and expanding what that is over time, but being able to expand that Overton window our own, but by not being phased by any of these different things that kind of happen. So
my brain's trying to coin us a term here for the personal Overton window. I mean, I like that. POW is good, but anyway, I'm listening.
It kind of is. It kind of is like a POW. But yeah, but I think that's, when we get into some of that like release work and these deeper kind of things, that's what we need to think about. Like, what do I allow in my consciousness? What is the window and what is the extreme, and being able to incorporate that, being able to just not to let that phase you too. Because anytime you have that reaction to anything, doesn't matter what it is, and I love how you're talking about, you're kind of like polarizing a relationship to see if people will kind of come up or if they're going to back off, right? Like it's got to be one or the other, but that challenge is there. And so it will push the direction one way or the other. And that's not necessarily bad. It's actually good.
The way I was practicing it in my past was bad because I was in a toxic place, or I had developed up to a point where, maybe it wasn't even always bad, but I definitely ended up in a place where I found myself kind of being a Svengali, and same thing. I was studying NLP and stuff, and I realized like, oh my goodness, you can just, I start to understand these guru characters and saw myself with leverage enough. It's like, I could just run shit. And then some part of me, the part of me that loves Jesus was like, hey, you can't do that, and I stepped away. Like we talked about that a little bit on our private call, I stepped back away from all this stuff for a while because I realized I was developing into someone I definitely did not want to be,
Yeah, and I want to get into that actually a little bit. This is, I think, a good place for that. As we kind of question ourselves and interview, what will I not allow? What's not okay for me? What hurts me when I hear, like, because people have such a ingrained and embedded reaction to some stuff, right? Like there are certain words you could say, like Nazi, or World War II or Hitler.
Yeah, flat Earth is kind of dulling down, but when it first came out, like I had two people I ended up having to unfriend and block on Facebook because they couldn't stop harping on me. Because I studied flat Earth for 3 years, and then I went on a debate on Andy Worski's show. That's how I kind of brought myself into the realm of being on live streams and on the internet. That's where it all started for me, because I just couldn't sit with it anymore and keep it. I wasn't keeping it a secret. I talked to people, but at the same time, there was some part of me that, like, hey, if I really think that through all the searching and reading and experimenting that I've done, that I've come to terms with the idea that the earth is flat, then I'm not going to be so polite that I'm never comfortable in my skin. If you want to talk to me, ask about it, or it comes up in conversation, I'm going to take my real position. And at first, people lost their minds, man. And people are kind of used to it now because it's not going away, which to me is evidence that it's true. Like if it's something's completely false and a lie, then you should be able to dismiss it pretty easily. If you say Sean Alger's blue, like, no, I'm not blue. My shirt's blue, but not me, right?
Right.
And so,
no, that's a great example too. Like I love that example.
Right, or anyone polarized on the political. We all have friends who are on the political spectrum. I would say boomers are really easy to trigger with about 101. We should write a book called 101 Boomer Trigger Words. it would fly off the shelf. And put all the information in there about how and why you should or shouldn't trigger someone and whether or not it's advantageous or not. That's an idea,
I love that idea. I think in the preface, we should explain to them why they shouldn't wear open-toed shoes, because chocolates aren't for everybody.
That's right. Exactly. We could make a bunch of arguments in the book to really trigger everybody. The secret could be the book's actually to trigger Gen Xers.
Right.
We could put it in there that boomers are not allowed and they're not supposed to read this book. So that way they'll dive in.
That's right. No, I love that. That's great. Yeah. It's so funny. The flat earth thing was something that I brought up at this like Liberty, sort of, and I didn't even bring it up. It wasn't that I was trying to convince anybody or put it on the table, even as a even as a consideration, but I was just like quoting a documentary that I had seen, and I was talking about something else, like more ancient history, like all this stuff has gone, like they've talked about the mud flood and all this, which,
right.
I don't really jive with the mud flood. I've seen a lot of evidence of, the earth shifting, mudslides, and I don't see buildings standing there after that happens. So, as far as like a lot of that idea goes, I don't know about all that.
Right,
anyway,
right. Just not something that grabs your attention and keeps you, that's that's the other thing, is everybody has something that allows them to either embrace or dismiss whatever the polarizing topic is. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're right or wrong, but that's like, like I know Ben Balderson isn't big on the idea that dinosaurs are fake, because he used to live in a place where they would dig up fossils all the time. So he's like, man, I've seen so many digs, right. I can't opt in, so I get it,
Yeah. There's all these little things. And too, my friend Becky in the chat, she's saying, funny how small things set people off. And there are teeny tiny little things that, will completely, it might not even be part of your argument or what you're pitching, but just because it's related to it, it's immediately disqualified or disgraced by somebody else who's like, absolutely not. It's like, well, look, dude, when I mentioned whatever it was at that Liberty conference, it's like, yeah, I'm talking about something that's completely outside of your personal Overton window, and you're calling me a crazy person. Do you realize that we're all here because we're called crazy people by the rest of society?
Right.
It's like, you can't walk up to a random person on the street and start talking to them about like flat earth ideas, right? Like they're going to completely just be like, what are you talking about? They're going to have
or sovereignty and liberty too, right?
Even that, exactly. Even sovereignty, even liberty, even, if you say taxation is theft, or like, if you talk about, like owning yourself, something that is as basic as that. People are going to
freak out when they say, I say, I'm not my birth certificate. They say, well, of course you are. I say, no. I say, you sound pretty crazy now, because I'm actually not a piece of paper. My birth certificate looks more like this. And I'm, I
I'm 8.5 by 11 inches tall.
That's right. My name's just a gift my mother gave me. I don't know what this is. I don't know who I am.
So the menu is the meal. Yeah. Okay. Got
it. That's right. I got to thank you for turning me on to the it's kind of one of your big things, if people don't know. I'm sure they do on your channel. The pendulums and the reality transurfing. Now, I listened to the whole book probably like 1.5 times, and it kind of goes with the release work. Like they go together. I think if we really were to put together a study group or a redundant excuse to compare them, that the release work fills the gap in the manifestation process, for lack of a better term. I mean, I don't think that's the way he calls it. I don't remember if he uses that term or not, but it helped me a lot. Pendulums is a great metaphor. The idea, I go through the world now since I met you, and it is really just because of you. A lot of the time it'll pop up the theoretical image, a situation, and I'm like, hey, there's, are you noticing that there's some pretty big pendulums swinging around? Because, you got pendulums swinging all the time everywhere. But then you get in situations, like you said, you can feel the vibe. Oh, the vibe. There's a vibe here. And it's like, oh, are you, so if you can be imperturbable, and another good word for it is hootless, like an owl that doesn't have anything to hoot about. If you can increase your hootlessness, then that pendulum can swing literally and touch the skin on the tip of your nose, and you don't have to react. But if you dodge it, you might hit the one behind you. And if you get mad and try and fight it, it might shred you. Or if you grab onto it and fall in love with it, it's going to take you way over here. Yep. You're going to swing with it. And then once you get all the way to the top of its arc, you might look and think, am I really, maybe I wasn't as in love as I thought, right? Like you talk about with cars. You didn't rush out and choose the first one. You're smart to test drive a bunch of cars, right? Don't go take a great deal on the one you think you like and then find it doesn't function in your life.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's part of getting out there and exploring, right? And exploring those different things and triggers. Yeah. The pendulum thing has helped me so much. And Abby in the chat is talking about like, let go of importance. Look, I mean, at the end of this, we know what's going to happen, right? Like I'm working on a script right now. It's called Everyone Dies at the End, and we're all cast in it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all us.
Nice.
So understanding that is like, it's a great way to just be like, okay, cool. Well, this is what I'm experiencing now. I'm not going to, there's no point in tripping about it. The more I do that, the more, so back to your thing, like how, how do I want to feel about this? Do I want to be angry? And if so, for how long? Because we truly can choose all that. It's really up to us. And that, like Becky's saying in the overcorrection thing, it's exactly right. Like you're talking about, like hanging on to that thing, and you get swung over here, and then now you're all the way over here, and then you look back and you're like, oh shit, this is going to hurt. Like I got to come all the way back from this.
Right. I got to choose. Am I going to let go and fall? Where I'm falling doesn't look great. Am I going to ride it back and try and be uncanny about where I let go?
Right.
That's what a lot of people do. You either look like a genius or look like a dumbass, but you try the next pendulum different.
That's right. Yeah. You have a different approach next time. You'll be like, well, maybe I'll do it something different,
Yeah. I love that. Are you really writing a script, or was that just a line? Because that's funny, man.
I mean, I am, but also,
yeah,
it's just
that's another thing that Beth says, like if you sign up for one of Beth's little courses that aren't too expensive, she's got some expensive stuff that's well worth the money, but you can get in for $100 or $200 on something that lasts a few weeks. And the audios, that's one of the things she says, don't worry, everyone's going to release everything eventually, because no bodies are leaving here except for through death. So, we've all noticed that there's just one guy that there's any allegation that he really came back full board, and it's pretty much the most controversial character there ever was, right?
Right.
And that's the only guy, and they killed him for trying to explain the whole thing,
Right. Totally. Of course. Yeah. That's what happens to people who do that. People who explain certain things like that. But yeah, so I like this idea. I love where this is going. And I know we talked a little bit about kind of like pretending to be asleep a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. With all of this, because it's like we get exposed to all this information. And so the more we can, I know you and I both kind of went deep down rabbit hole, conspiracy sort of world, and start to really take a lot of life for granted, be angry about our situation, feel victimized, feel like we're in a place where
obsessed, right? 12 hours a day reading. I was taking care of a man in a wheelchair when I really started to dive into the 9/11 stuff, and I lived with him 24/7. So as long as he was content and happy with his needs being met via my caregiving, I had all the time in the world to listen to stuff. I would be cooking and listening to podcasts and, reading, buying books. And I did that for 3 years, absolutely obsessed,
Yeah.
And
me too.
Hey, people are doing it right now. They're doing it with the, the stuff that's happened recently, with the illness in the world, the spread all over the world, allegedly, et cetera, and what kind of tokens you might want to accept or reject based on these types of things. And I see it. I got a neighbor that's that way, and he's an old boomer, and he's a little bit more what we call awake than most. But you can tell that his free time, if he's not out in his shop with the garage door open, he's kind of he's a cool neighbor. I really like him, and he's got the same initials as my dad. So and my father passed away in 1999. So there's some like, hey, this guy's kind of like my dad. That's kind of cool, but he's more of I use the metaphor Spock, like Mr. Spock, or like Captain Kirk. Is from some marketing thing I learned years ago. And for people that don't know, that's from Star Trek. And Captain Kirk is like this blustering, emotional, arrogant ass, And Mr. Spock is literally like it's part of his DNA to be logical and not even hardly feel any emotion at all. And my neighbor is like that. And so I know he's dragging down all the data off of all of these official places, and he's shoving it into spreadsheets and crunching and adjusting and getting more stuff to publish and stuff. All this stuff's happening on Twitter, and it's you see him, and it's like, oh man. And part of me is actually like jealous and curious to get with him on it. Like we could go together off the deep end, But part of me is also aware, like, do I want to go back off the deep end? I've been there.
Right.
Like, no, I don't think I warn people not to mess with this stuff.
Yeah.
I stepped away from it. Like we both talked about that, walking away and doing something else.
Right.
Go back to sleep. Right.
Right. Yeah. So I want to talk about that because I think there's a balance there. I think it's real easy to misinterpret that and put yourself in like the Cyrus position in the Matrix or something where it's like, you know, he's eating the steak and he's like, I know it's just a digital representation of the steak and I just want to be an actor and, you know, all this stuff or whatever. Not talking about going back to sleep like that and like the Judas character he represents, but having like
sometimes it happens naturally. That happened to me. The first book I read was called Pawns in the Game by a naval intelligence officer named William Guy Carr. And it was all about the symbolism on the dollar bill. And this was like, probably the late 90s, before 9/11 for sure. And then at some point, I knew all that stuff in the back of my mind. It's not like it completely went away, but I stopped actively searching and looking, and I stopped having that mild paranoid American's a good name because that's what you become.
Yeah.
Like, you know, two guys shake hands in suits at church and you're looking at their thumb.
Right.
Is that a lion's paw grip? Is that a Masonic? You know, what are these guys doing, right? You know, somebody's wearing a Star of David. Now you're like, hey, I wonder what that means, you know, or what, you know.
Right.
So it's nice to fall back asleep in a way sometimes. Right. But I agree not to be. There are people that become the Judas character too, and they want some Matrix steak, so they intentionally do the wrong thing, you know. But that's not the experience you and I had. We both had a very similar experience of allowing or encouraging ourselves to fall back to sleep somehow, you know.
Yeah. I want to dig into that because I think it's more complicated than just saying, you know, going back to sleep or what have you, or kind of sleepwalking, because it's not that, but it's also putting yourself in a position where you can keep yourself positive. You can retain your power, you know, within a certain context. It's not that you don't see maybe the larger picture and some of the other things, but how much control over that stuff do we have anyway, right? Like, it's real easy for me to just hop on YouTube and like listen to, you know, whoever, like Luke Rudkowski or whoever, who has it every day, has the same video. Oh my God, they're actually doing it! Exclamation point, right? It's the same video every day.
It's the thing of the Ron Paul gif. It's happening. It's happening. You know, finally happening. They're going to audit the Fed or whatever.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that. That's awesome. Ultimately, though, like I'm on the outside looking in. Even if there's something that I want to do, I can influence certain things, but there's not a whole lot of like influence that I have. And I was listening to Tim Dillon talking on Jessa Reed's podcast. It's like a new one that she's doing. And he was basically saying, he used this analogy. He's like, the person I know with the most clout, the most leverage is Joe Rogan. Okay. He can't do any of the shit that I wish could be done. Not even him. So what am I supposed to do? He's like, you could either be in the movie, you know, like the dude who put the horns on and ran in for January 6th, that guy, he's in the movie.
Yeah.
Or
still in the movie too. He's gonna be stuck in the movie probably the rest of his life now.
Yeah, exactly. He's always going to be in the movie now. He crossed the threshold. Or
the pendulum let go at the top and just flew away like a rocket ship, right?
That's right, dude. Exactly. You know, and then but the alternative of that is where most of us are, and even people who have enormous clout and influence in society are still on the outside of the movie looking at it, right? So that's really where we are. So in a way of wisdom, it's so easy to put ourselves on the chopping block and say, well, I've got to make a change and I've got to save the world. Right. Well, one of the best things about transurfing is he says it later in the book that like, it's not on you. You can't save the world. And
it's a shitty realization, but it's really healthy to welcome and accept that your position to affect massive change is very small, almost completely insignificant, right? And I'd say this is still an example of the escalating too. What you said, Tim Dillon said, is a perfect example of escalating. You know, because to me and you, somebody like Tim Dillon definitely appears to be in a superior, more powerful position than we're in. Now that may not be true, but because we know, you know, he's got pretty worldwide notoriety, right?
Right.
And so if he's looking at Rogan and saying, man, I know Rogan, I know where he's at, I know what leverage he's got, and I don't think he could do shit, is a great strategy for yourself to be like, oh, well, so what can I do? You know, now I can call my mama, right? Tell her I love you, mom. You know, there's things you can do that don't have anything to do with this imagined outcome. You know, we're gonna catch all the pedophiles and make them stop raping the babies. We're gonna put them all in prison or execute them, right? Or whatever. Right. Like, no, that's not real. That's a false reality. That's not
Yeah, even if that did happen, like we would have little to do with it. Like other than
Right.
just being like rah, you could
Well, yeah,
cheer.
no, me and you wouldn't even believe it anyway. Be like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, right. That's exactly
This
right.
is not right. Just like they do with guys like Weinstein and Epstein, they use them as a Judas goat or a scapegoat. And if you really study intelligence work and real conspiracies, not just stuff you find on the internet, you know that they have what they call damage control fallback positions, limited hangouts. Oh, paralleling is my favorite one to tell people about, where they'll create an almost identical scenario and run it right alongside the ugly truth, and they'll omit and or add things so make it look more dramatic and weird, or take out key components, and that works really good to keep people off of whatever they're people are defending. If they're doing really evil bad stuff, they're defending that position for a reason, because if they're found out, people will try to stop them in a big way. People
Yeah.
are not afraid to mount up in arms or any other things if they really think you're doing horrible evil things, so they come up with all these strategies to to manage it, and for us to get
Red
stuck in and
herrings
think
and
that we have a solution other than to do our best to remain not the actor in the movie, but the person watching and noticing that you're always taking a role. It could be for 5 seconds, it could be for 25 years. You can't avoid taking on a role. You can try, but good luck. You can't just stay home. We tried that, and everybody knows how crazy they went trying to stay home for 2 years. It
totally.
doesn't. You have to be involved, but you also don't want to be lost in the active role.
You can
I,
consciously choose your own role
right?
as opposed to just being shoved in or pushed by a
Yeah.
pendulum into this character that you're like, well, I didn't really choose to be here, but here I am. So I don't. So we
That
don't
made me
mean.
imagine. I got to interrupt you, man. It made me
Yeah.
imagine somebody telling you that you got the part and you didn't even audition. Like, what part? Like, well, you're going to play John Candy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we got the money. The check's already in the mail. They already put the money in the bank. You need to show up. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm not playing John Candy, right? They're trying to tell me I'm playing the
You
ghost.
shoved me into this role.
I cannot do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So yeah, so
Right.
don't
Into
so
the pigeonhole.
so yeah, into the pigeonhole. So that's truly sleeping, which is not what we're talking about. Like
Right.
that's truly sleeping, like whatever. Like I'm just basically, not even challenging thought. I'm not being observant. I'm not being aware of my role in the movie or whatever in the distant part
Yeah.
of the movie. As opposed to being like, okay, I know what's going on. I can see a little bit more of a broader perspective. Certainly don't know everything, right? But like I'm operating under a much wider range of,
Right. An
of
informed
attention,
position.
right? And a more informed position, and then going out and saying, you know what? Here are the things that I want to do. I want to pursue this. I want to learn this. These things are enticing or intriguing to me, and I'm going to go and create this role and not completely not completely go to sleep, but instead of allowing all of these things in my Overton window to trigger me, I'm going to learn how to be truly imperturbable and kind of shut that off in a way. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the sleeping thing. We had a couple different metaphors.
No, yeah, I put it in, I underlined it in my notes. So the reason it came up when me and you were talking privately was that I use this as a metaphor for people who get stuck in that we've got to do something. When I figured out all the strange stuff surrounding 9/11 and a bunch of other conspiracy stuff when I was young, I would burn off DVDs and like try to shake people down at the bar. You're drinking beers, you got to you got to look at this documentary, you got to watch this website, you got to do all these things. You're trying to wake people up, right? And we see a lot of people, especially right now, because you know, as conspiracy people, we kind of suddenly hit like a 12-0 run.
Yeah, we're batting 1,000 right now.
And a lot of people are like, and I've always seen that somewhat, but it's like the things are moving so much faster than they used to in the whole world, in everything, that it's very different now than it used to be. But I used to tell people when I would catch them trying to wake people up, I tell them, man, if someone's literally asleep, you wouldn't use these type of strategies to wake them up unless it was a literal emergency. If I know you just did 3 gigs and you just drove and all this stuff, and you come to my house, you fall asleep on the couch, and you're sleeping comfortably and soundly, I'm going to be very careful to allow you to sleep and get your rest But, you know, if I catch the kitchen on fire and I can't get it put out, I'm going to wake you up in a big hurry, you know, like, we got to get out of here. I'm sorry, man. You know, can't grab your shoes. Like, you know, the oil fire. We got to go, you know. But other than that, if I have to wake you up, say it's just time to go, I'm going to use these literal strategies of make a little noise, you know, walk with heavy footfalls, maybe accept a phone call and not go out of the room, you know, so you can hear me. So, and because you guys, you know, do dream work, I know that, you know, so it might trigger you into that liminal state if you're on my couch, and then you start the process of waking up. And I remember one of the main things we talked about, because this works the other way. I love the way that we approach to this in the conversation right now, because there's people that want to wake other people up. And in my opinion, it's smart to not do that in an aggressive way, because it really doesn't work. You usually just trigger people that have huge resistance, just like a sales process. If I'm insisting tomorrow, call you on the phone that you got to buy something, the chances you're going to buy it are almost zero. Because like, what are you talking about? Like, A, I don't have the money. B, I don't want the thing. And it's the same, you know. One guy told me that when we were kids or younger, you know, I was forcing this 9/11 DVD on him, and he went and watched it. And he's like, he came back to me and he's like, well, now what the hell am I supposed to do, Sean? You know, now I know all this horrible shit. And I feel way more hopeless and way more scared and way more angry than I ever did before. You know, why'd you do this to me? Why'd you wake me up? You know? And so I would say the harder thing is people that are pretending to sleep. And I'd say we see that a whole bunch. You know, this term, the silent majority, kind of is connected to that idea that there's a lot of people who are privy to how screwed up and weird the world really is. And they even know a lot more than us conspiracy expert types think they do. And now if someone's pretending to sleep, you can't wake them up, you know. You know, they might lay right through a bucket of water and just roll over and yawn and, you know, pull the wet blanket over their head like I'm still asleep. I'm because we talked about that, the idea that pretending to sleep affords you opportunity.
It does.
Like when you're a kid, you could get a lot of information, especially right about this time of year. If you could take a nap in the living room when mom and dad think that you're asleep and they start talking about Christmas presents, you could get a whole bunch of information, you know.
That's right.
You might find out that you're having a hard time being imperturbable when you find out your sister gets her favorite, but you don't get jack shit, you know.
Right. All of a sudden you just woke up on the floor.
Yeah.
I remember
if you're from
doing
a family like mine, you know, you got uncanny people in the family that know that you're faking sleeping. So
they're just messing with you.
Information campaign on your ass, you know. We had to cancel the Disneyland trip. I got in a car accident. I didn't tell you. I'm sorry, honey. You know, this kind of stuff.
That's so good. Yeah, absolutely. Or even when we were kids, I remember faking asleep in the car, and then parents would carry us in. They knew we were asleep.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be carried is a great reason to sleep, right?
Yeah. But there's a strategy there because, you know, as we look at what we can influence, which is really just people around us, other people, it's like you're saying, you know, loving on people, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to like go. And it's interesting to hear you say too, it's like you give your friend that DVD, he watches it and he's like, well, now what? You know, like that's how I felt too, though I was following my own curiosity.
Right.
And it's different when you don't have anybody to blame, you know, at that point. And
what have I done to myself?
Right, you know? Right, exactly. Yeah, I had to kind of like, I would say like right around 2017 is really where I started to just be like, all right, look, I know all this stuff. I've learned all this stuff. I got to put it away. I need to use my faculties in order to be productive, in order to be constructive, and to create something and to do something. So, you know, my first thing that I did was I wanted to start a business. So we started an Airbnb business in 2017, and it wound up doing really well up until the pandemic. Like,
right.
I did quite well with that. And so that kind of helped me. The pandemic kind of shoved me back into like looking back into all this stuff, you know, because I was like at that point, like in 2020, I was on cruise ships. I was doing a really good job at being like kind of, you know, going back to sleep, but I still knew what was going on, right? Like,
right. I wrote it down here, man. I just amended my note because once again, coined terminology, being okay in or with Normieville. That's what I wrote.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
So if we call the regular world where people are kind of wherever they're at, they're not really addressing the fact that there's huge elephants in every room, you know, and that's the way the world really is, you know.
It is.
You know, and so, and you know, when I used to hang out way back in the day on 4chan, they used to call it hiding your power level, you know. And who knows how much those guys were LARPing or they were serious, but you know, if you go on the boards, people people act like the worst possible kind of people you could imagine.
Right.
You know?
It really
They're
does bring
just
out the worst.
militant, violent nationalists of all castes. You know, people think it's just the white nationalists, but if you actually hang out on the board, you find out that the two funniest guys that are anonymously posting are like a black guy and a Chinese guy, and they're both pretending to be white nationalists or something like that. You know, this kind of stuff is what's going on. And they would call it hiding your power level. And so I would say instead of hiding, just idling it. Learn to idle your power level. That's good. I like
yeah, that is good. I'm writing that down too. Yeah, because like during that time, you know, I was happy in Normieville. It was cool. I got the opportunity to hang out with my friends while we didn't really talk that much about politics or any of that kind of stuff. I kept that away from our normal chats, but I was able to do the fun things, the entertain. You know, I was hosting shows on a cruise ship and goofing around. It was so fun, and we really got treated well too. It was one of those times where I felt like so many times in the past I would come into something just after the good old days of it.
Right.
This was I nailed it, right? Like I nailed the good old days, and I don't think it's as fun anymore since the pandemic, right? Like they've got all these new rules and you can't like just hang out with everybody afterward.
Right. Your epoch is over. Right?
Yeah, that is definitely the good old days are gone as far as that is concerned. But it was such a fun thing, and I never had to worry about explaining my position or talking about this or that. And it just kind of like goes to show too, the pandemic changed obviously a lot of things, and it just put a lot more heat on these ideas and putting that, like, cause I remember when I was a kid, like we didn't talk politics or religion at dinner.
No, it's a newer thing. Even the red and the blue is a newer thing. Like
it is.
You know, we're old enough to remember where, you know, what'd you say? They come out in the middle 90s or something where they really started to brand hard, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They pushed it. They started pushing it hard, man.
Right.
And even into 2000 and the election of Bush and Gore, it was like people were joking about it because of the whole confusion about it and the dangling chads and all that stuff. Like we were all just dying laughing, and I don't think anybody really cared that much, to be honest. I mean, it was
age group like we are. Like we never. I mean, I voted one time in a presidential election for Cynthia McKinney because she was literally standing there talking to Rumsfeld about, you know, human trafficking contracts with huge military, gun and bomb makers, and bringing up 9/11 evidence and information. And they would call recess on her real quick and then come back to a closed session. And I was like, this lady's running for president, this black lady right here, you know? And I voted for her knowing that it was a wasted vote and with reserves because she was all about the Green Party, or at least that's where she decided to run under. But other than that, that was the only time I ever, we didn't care.
No.
They prompted us into caring since, like, I would say from that point forward, it just escalated and escalated until all of a sudden it's sevens across the board and Trump's winning the presidential election through meme magic all of a sudden. Like, huh? What?
Yeah, that was... Yeah.
It sucked me in. I was never on anybody's side, but I definitely got sucked into the entertainment side of it, and people would call me on the right because I didn't hate Trump because I thought he's funny. I mean, I do despise Trump, you know, but I wouldn't allow myself to be a part of that, like the 2 minutes hate, you know, from the 1984 novel, you know, where you're obliged, you know, everybody stop. We have to hate Trump for 2 minutes straight. Everybody, you know, stand up straight, clench your fists, clench your jaw, ready, you know.
Well, when you understand the idea of like pendulums, for instance, it's like as soon as that happened, like I saw, like that's when I was learning this model, right? I'm reprogramming myself to this new model where I'm not anybody's savior. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm trying to, you know, identify my character, be my most authentic self, and truly, you know, set out on that. And of course, I want to be around other people. Other people are the true riches, you know, the loved ones, the people in our lives, our family, our friends, stuff like that. That's always been my main concern anyways. But, you know, at this point, I'm like,
tribe, you know.
Exactly. I'm pushing off. I'm like, I'm going this way. I'm not going to get, you know, stalled out back here. And, you know, all that kind of stuff was going on, and it was entertaining in one sense. But when you start to understand the idea of pendulums, and then everybody's, you know, printing "fuck Trump" on your bass drum and screaming that out at your show, you don't realize how much power. They don't realize how much power and validity they actually gave them because
yeah,
like,
they
based
had
on their
anything to
hate.
push against if they wouldn't have hated him.
Exactly. That's like the biggest thing that just is unseen. And I wish people understood this idea, because if you oppose an idea, you're giving it just as much energy as if you 100% welcome it. So if you
takes us to Hegelian dialectic.
Exactly.
You know, the one lady I told you about, all about her stuff, Nikki Rapana, that's how I found her, is that I kept seeing that term coming up in like 06, 07, you know, like Hegelian dialectic. I kept seeing it. And so I glanced at the definition. I'm like, okay. But then if you dive in like anything else, like, well, it's not fair to really blame the philosopher Hegel for, you know, Hegel believed, well, he believed it was a naturally occurring thing. And so I tell people, you know, it's just like so many other things. Like, you know, you can't really blame social evolution processes on Darwin either. You know, I think Darwin really believed he had discovered physical evolution. I think it looks pretty stupid, you know, in retrospect. But other people took that, and they took advantage of that opportunity to use the concept of evolution in a less honest way. And I'd say the same thing happened with Hegel. Hegel came up with what he thought he had identified a natural process that everything naturally divides itself into what they call thesis, antithesis. You got a side, and the side that has to be against the side.
Right.
Well, then I tell people the best way to understand it is like the mob. The mob comes around and they bang on your door and they're like, hey, it's $300 a week from now on, protection money. Because, you know, a lot of house fires are happening and we think we can prevent house fires. And you say, no, I don't think I want to buy any protection. Thanks, you know. And so then your neighbor across the street's house burns down and they come and they say it's $600 a week now and we can't guarantee anything. And you think, well, shit, where am I at? You know, problem, reaction, solution. They contrived what Hegel thought was a naturally occurring thing into a useful tool that they could use. We see it all the time. And they polarize us, you know, hard.
That's even the elements of story right there too. You have the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis, where those two opposing elements, the antagonist and the protagonist, right? Like they mix, and then there's an outcome as a result of that. But instead of just observing the process, like now it's like let's intentionally use this process, and you know, like instead of the natural aspect of it happening, it's controlled. It's like a controlled, If
we find out we're being set up in a relationship instead of naturally falling in love with the girl, then the synthesis and the outcome, there's actually a fourth step in the process, and most people don't know that it's thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and that allegedly goes on and on and on until there is no antithesis. That's the theory from Hegel. And the fourth step in the process, which they still contrive, which isn't supposed to be contrived, is called transcendence. So if you successfully go through the philosophical idea, then you eventually get to a point where everything resolves and you get something like oneness or peace or a 0 point, because no antithesis arises. So then you have the answer. That's why Hegel believed it was a process that would work, because you know, and of course, I mean, Hegel, I never liked Hegel, and he's really hard to understand, but I didn't like that he thought, you know, like, well, in his mind, the final step in the process was pretty much like the state becomes God, you know, and he wasn't wanting that. In his philosophical ruminating, that's what he decided upon as like, this is what looks like happens. Eventually we get to know synthesis because all power is concentrated, you know, hopefully in a benevolent way, in the state as something like the Godhead, you know. But so they take that out of a natural process And so you still get the contrivance of a transcendent step, which is what, I think that's what they're pushing us at now. They're
Yeah.
trying to manufacture a transcendence. Well, of all of us that are out here looking at esotericism, mysticism, occultism, and all of these as personal life processes to improve yourself and really learn who you are, stop being a robot, become aware, become imperturbable. Well, you don't get to have the transcendent step is that we can't go buy it at the 7-Eleven. That's not how that works. It doesn't work that way, So obviously you can't make it over there in the corner and then supply it to me. Like, oh yeah, I totally forgot to ship your transcendence, man. I apologize. I'm gonna get it in the mail this afternoon. Maybe I'll try to order it off of Amazon so that I can use my Prime and get it to you in 2 days. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, in that, man, mocking that natural process or using that natural process in limits. I mean, you can see this too, how it can grow with this two-party thing, right? To where ultimately there's no other option, right? Other than this resolve for it to like kind of turn into.
Right. If we could successfully opt out, enough of us, then their shit would fall apart.
Exactly.
But people are so tied in, back to the idea, if people could all become just slightly more imperturbable and give less fucks. That's why these books about not giving a fuck are so popular, because it's about surrender and release. It's just good in vogue marketing to say, learn how to stop giving a fuck. Not giving a fuck isn't quite accurate, because that's apathy. If you really truly don't give a fuck, then you're in the lowest scale there is on emotion. That's why people kill themselves. They don't believe anyone cares. They personally don't care, and they can opt out from that point, if they can find enough energy to at least kill themselves. Like a lot of people get stuck in that place where they'd love to kill themselves, but they don't have the courage or the power that it takes, because not giving a fuck is not a good description. You want to understand that you're allowed to give a fuck and choose to be neutral of it.
Yeah. Maybe we can distinguish between like having a deep care or emotional investment versus like not caring that much about the outcome, being because I think a lot of what we want to do, it does come from like a sincere place, like a loving place, where we want to share things. That's good.
Yeah, that's why I have compassion on the left, even though they've become really annoying since Trump. Because the most of the people I know that embrace that position, even though they've kind of been taken way over into an area that they would, if they could do it overnight instead of over the course of 5 years, they would be aghast at how horrible they've become so quickly. But I do believe 90% of people are coming from an absolute genuine place. They don't want people to be racist towards one another. They want people to be loving, kind, and accepting. Black guy walks into your convenience store, treat him like a human being. That's the position they're coming from. And so that's good. That's ideal, But so it's hard to combine that. I mean, it's really not hard, but if the light will come on, that having a thick skin and not letting things heart sleeve you and trigger you and knee jerk you is what allows that to actually happen, instead of wishing and wanting and trying to enforce. That's what we see now. It's enforced, right?
Yes.
You have to do blank, otherwise you're canceled, or we're going to shame you. They use shame now as a big thing,
Yeah.
You should be ashamed of yourself. I can't believe what you said on stage, Bootsy. You should be ashamed of yourself. That's disgusting. How dare you? Right?
Exactly. Well, dude, that's the funny thing about it too. And like the mics that I host, I don't always remember to do it, but I try to remember to be like, look, if I say something or somebody says something, you don't like it, you think it's bad, like I want you to talk to me about it. Like the point of me being up here is not to offend you, but you should
laugh, right?
Yeah, it's to laugh,
right? To get enlightenment coming around. Laughter and enlightenment kind of go together,
I'm definitely
that way,
I definitely want to, to portray it that way. That's where I'm going. Ultimately, it's a little bit hard because that's a crazy mix. But my point is like, I don't want you to get offended, but I do want, the joke to work. So it could be objectively better, right? So like that imperturbability it's important. It's important to be, and then from that objective place, because now you're not just reacting with some emotional like outburst or booing or hissing or shaming someone. Instead, it's like, hey, look, here's what it was that you said. that I don't think sits right. If you change
Right.
this, maybe if you did it like this, then I think you would get the point would come
Right.
across that you're trying to make, but it wouldn't be offensive. And so that's where
Right.
we want to get
Exactly.
to.
Without the imperturbability, you never get to that point because the person sees your face and they're just offended or hurt or angry and they just hate your guts. They don't want to inform you. They want to keep
they don't
you.
want to solve the problem.
Right.
They just want to be upset and hurt and then blame somebody else for that, which it truly is.
Trap. That's the thing that makes me so sad on both sides. Don't misunderstand us for talking about only the left. The people on the right can be just as snowflakey as anybody else, depending, you start talking about why gun control might be a good idea or why it's okay for women to get an abortion with a bunch of people with their red hats on. You'll see them all completely, start clutching their pearls and wringing their hands and crying about how ignorant and uninformed you are just as fast,
Those NLP triggers pop right off.
Yeah. Those guys are in the same position to be imperturbable if they want to and listen in.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, all these things have I believe, have like a balanced point where I think people could even at least get close to agreement.
Yeah.
But these things that are so polarizing, that's why I think like the media and these folks keep pushing it out there is to just continue to further divide, continue to inflame people and their opinions and get them upset, in order to get more attention, more, whatever, you name it.
Just like any market, the spiritual energy market is actually the most popular and most powerful market in the world. It makes the stock market look like a drop in the bucket. And we had a word when we first started. Let's see, I had it in, what was it? I said, we were talking about, polarized dichotomies. And to me, that's their game. Like, if you can't actually make a stock certificate in the stock market, then you don't have anything to sell. And to me, it's the polarized dichotomy process. If I can find where Owen is mad or sad or glad and kind of pin something to it, now I've got a ticket that I can run through the market. But if you can't find anything, and it seems like Owen's pretty neutral no matter what, you even say the most shocking or the most exciting stuff that you can find, and this guy's still got his poker face on, then you can't manifest that golden ticket to get the market moving, And I think that part of the reason we see so much bullshit nowadays is because I think, even though this is completely contrary to what most people would say or believe, but I think that as humanity, we are all closer to this process than we've been in my lifetime. That people actually, it's not that they don't care, but they recognize that caring is their valuable token. That's what they've got. And you can run out. I mean, that's how I crashed my life. I tried to codependent everybody, help everybody, say yes to everybody, and also be the big boss in charge of everything and everybody until there was no water in my well. And so I kept running the bucket down there and pretending like I had some water, but I didn't. And so then I crashed and burned, And I think people are aware of it after the last 2-3 years from 2016 till now. They know they can run out of care. And so everyone's being more reserved with their care. Well, that sucks all the energy out of their loosh market, if you want to use a popular conspiracy term, this electromagnetic energy that's subtle, that we all have, everyone's aware of it. If there's a quiet meeting of Catholic women all inside of a restaurant having dinner and me and you walk in, it's going to change the vibe. We don't have to do anything. They're going to go, whoa. And nothing, even if we have our imperturbability on max, we understand we're coming in. Everyone can feel it. Everyone can see it, And I think everyone's more aware of it. I'd say that's the blessing of all the weirdness that's happened in these last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I think so too.
So much good stuff happening, man.
Oh yeah, there is. There's a ton of good stuff happening. There's a ton of crazy stuff happening.
People are gardening. People are learning to change so many things in an affirmative way. And we've got, I call it spontaneous artist collective. And what would you say? It's 24 pretty big fat groups. You got Chance at Interverse. You got guys like the One on One podcast coming up. You got us over here with the Weaving Spiders Welcome. You got my old show, Art's Only Picture Show fans, and it never stops. You got the False Reality Check. You got Lindsay from Rogue Ways, yep. And the list goes on and on and on. And more people are starting more groups, and all of these people cross boundaries, interact, and exchange with each other in a way that I've never seen in my life. I feel so blessed to be in the middle of it. That's how I met you.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. I'd love to talk about that too. And just, and maybe talk a little bit about the Weaving Spiders, how that started and your other group as well. And, as much as you want to share, obviously, I know you and I have both kind of been through some similar experiences with groups in the past, where things didn't go quite how we thought, depending on how things just shook out, right?
That's what happens. Sometimes you get big challenges that confront you. And then, me and you talked about this about, if we're both being vague, it's for a reason, and it's okay. There's, if you get legal processes involved in your life, especially if they're active, which a lot of people know that about me right now. There's something happened. A close friend of ours passed away, and the allegation is that she killed herself, and lots of people have doubts about that. And so they threw a whole bunch of us into a lawsuit, and it'll mess up your life. It'll make you think really hard. And to me, it's a blessing and a test on exactly the whole theme of this whole show. Like, oh, you think you're imperturbable, huh? Really? Let's test that. Let's see where you're at, Job.
Right.
Right.
Well, dude,
really nothing bad has happened. I'm not, I've had some pretty major inconveniences, but no one's dead. Once again, no one's in prison. No one's lost a limb or an eye or anything. To me, that's another escalation tactic, right? You can really ask yourself, anybody died? Anybody lose a foot?
Right.
The baby almost gets suffocated or something. No, everything's probably pretty okay then. Honestly, it might feel like shit. But that's back to that awareness book. Well, that means it's going on inside of you. Well, so that means you can choose.
Yeah, and especially if it's something new too. You're like, oh my God, this is new to me. I've never experienced this before.
Right.
So you've got that uncertainty that's wavering. But one of the things that happened for me is I had a friend who I was talking to at the time. He knew all about the situation, and I called him up and kind of let him know what was going on. And he goes, "Bro, you got CEO problems." He's like,
that's right. That makes it sound like a compliment. Like,
right, exactly. It's like, how many of these come across? He's like, think of a high level CEO. How many times do they get threatened, with this or that, right? Like, don't worry about it, man. You're just in a different category now. And and that's one thing that's really easy to forget too, as you kind of elevate in your life, if you want to call it that, or get on to the next part of the process, is problems don't go away. They just become more difficult, more complicated, and different. They're just different. So, usually it's a higher quality problem that goes with a higher quality existence or situation, but maybe not always.
That's deep though. And I feel the same way. So that's interesting that our situations are so similar, because I have always told people, especially in this game where you're trying to get impressions, trying to get likes, you're trying to get people that want to tune in and listen and watch reruns and all this stuff. If you're going to be out here doing this, it's for some reason. You want to build up your following and get interactions with people. And I tell people that are just starting up for years, like if you're getting, because if you start getting your first trolls and haters and people, oh, this guy's a fat stupid loser and he looks stupid, and then whatever, you get some people attacking you in the comments or even in the private messages, it'll rattle your cage. And I used to tell people that is your first huge sign of success, is that if someone decides that they're going to spend their energy attacking you, then whatever you're doing is working in some regard. You may not be able to suss it out 100%, but it's working, because people don't waste and give away their energy for nothing. You triggered them. You got them, on the spot. And so then if I turn that back on myself, I was like, well, I guess I'm having reasonably huge success. If someone wants to pay money to somebody to drag me into a legal circumstance and continue, not be agreeable or just relentless about it, like, oh, okay, you got a lot of energy to spend on me. Well, what a blessing. Thank you. God bless you, But it took me a lot to get to that position where you're, see Christ in Crowley, right? That's
Right.
written on my dry erase board to
Man,
try to
that's
truly represent this feeling of, Christ consciousness is a good way to say it, even though they've kind of besmirched that with weird new agey stuff. To me, following Jesus isn't anything. I'm a Christian, but I don't always say it like that. They used to call them the people of the way. Christians was a title somebody else gave them.
right.
If you read the red letters in the Bible, I can't find any problem with it.
Same. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't. I don't think you could do much
to me,
better.
It's the most
as a
sublime,
philosopher.
perfectly surreal attitude you can take towards life. And it's the imperturbability, literally to the point where they're mounting you up onto the cross, and you're still not perturbed. They're killing you, in the most violent, horrible way.
And you're asking them for God to forgive them, right?
Yeah, you're openly confessing, right? Like, hey, that they don't understand what they're doing. Don't be hard on them about this. Let it go. I forgive it. It's fine.
They have a lot of money invested in this ride. They are really, really, really invested to the Bill Hicks thing, where it's a ride, and we have to remember that it's a ride. But there's a lot of people who put a lot into it, and so they don't want it to be seeming like a ride, right?
Are you taking it? It's a good question to ask yourself: are you taking it personally in any situation? Are you taking it personally? And even if you are for the right reason, it's okay to dial that down. If someone hates me with all of their might, I don't have to take it personally. I'm not required to. It's really easy to. I'm arrogant. I'm Sean Alger. Do you know who the fuck I am? Come on, man.
Right.
That's the natural gut feeling, right? I'm somebody. You stepped on my shoe,
Right. You stepped on my Yeezys, bro.
The only shoes I got, exactly. These are the only Yeezys I got. They don't even fucking make these anymore. Now they say Adidas. Damn. Right.
No,
that's
absolutely.
It's not required. It's not required. You can give your enemies your Yeezys. You just take them off and say, here, keep them. You want them? Even if you're going to throw them away, take them. It's okay.
But it's true. It's so counterintuitive to how
it is. You can get there. It's possible.
Well, yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
I feel good, man. This is good.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is good. Well, yeah, I do want to talk about the spiders. What's going on with that, and what's going on with you? As far as what ponds you're kind of being a part of and contributing to. And I love the fact that there's these different groups and we kind of overlap and lean on each other and
send people here and they come there and like, where are you from? Like, oh, I think I found out about Admiral Hits because of you through chance. I think you guys were together on a stream, and he said some stuff that really inspires me, and of course he's got that trippy ass spaceship that he's traveling around, and at least I assume he's still doing it. I know that's one thing I love about him. People are like, this is your calling, bro. You have to do this. Like, no, I don't. I might wrap this up tomorrow and be done and never do it again. It's possible that I could fold this up right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so the Weaving Spiders Welcome is what I call like a esoteric cult conspiracy symposium. And what happened was me and my friend Jim Maiden, who's the guy that's really mounted up and take full charge of the spiders. It started with him and a guy named David Barsky, but Barsky just hasn't been able to be as consistent as he was at the beginning. And so he's really not as involved. And, a lot of, some people are, they just they come around and it's cool. And then they vanish forever and you don't know where the hell they're at. And they come back and it's kind of cool, but you're still like, what's going on? And I talk to Barsky sometimes. I haven't talked to him in a while, but really it's Jim is the one who's taken the responsibility, as you know, to produce this show today is not some small thing. There's a lot of pieces that you put in place to say, all right, Sean, here's the link. We're ready. We're going to go live even, which is an even bigger deal than just recording,
Right.
And so me and Jim, the true beginning of the story was, like I said, I decided I was going to come out into the world as a flat earther to at least all of my friends and relatives and people that I was in touch with online. And part of that for me was I kind of did the same thing we've been talking about. I like the way that this whole thing's kind of got a natural shtick, as they say, right? So I realized I was getting too sucked into the research was what we like to call it, right? Well, I'm researching today. I'm making a lot of bookmarks that I'm never going to read again, and I even wrote a page of notes that I don't even know what it says. I'm researching, and I uh, I got that feeling of burnout. Like this is too much. It's all too serious. It's all too dark. It's all too heavy. It's all too hopeless. It's all too fear porny. And so I took a huge risk and clicked on the internet blood sports link that I saw on 4chan. I think it was on 4chan. And I'd seen that link on 4chan over and over again. And I just had an intuitive feeling, don't click that thing. And so what internet blood sports was Andy Worski and a guy named Jean-Francois Garapi. They call him JFG. And then there was this other guy named Tonka Saw who had a different show. But what they would do is either on Worski's show, they called it Worski Live, or over on Tonka Saw's show, which they called the Kumite, like from the movie Bloodsport, right? That's the whole name came from that Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. So internet blood sports, they would invite people in the most taboo categories to just get on the stream together and just kind of like yell and cuss and try to assert their position over the top of each other with the like lightest possible moderation. Like Worski or JFG would be like, that's enough. You're not giving him a chance to talk. Even though, they're hurling insults, they'd say, can you handle the bant, the banter? Can you handle the, if you just start throwing me under the bus, making fun of me, picking on me, running down my appearance, and also adding in all of the key touchstones that we were talking about this whole conversation. This is why you're a stupid, fat, ugly idiot for thinking flat earth or conspiracies are real and all this, this is what they would do. And they would get on there and just try to destroy each other. And it was really fascinating because to me, it was real science. They were allowing the gate open for real philosophical, old school, trivium style debate. You're going to get your words and the definitions of your words squared away. Because the real argument has to start with, we have to agree on some definitions or we're just straw manning the shit out of each other.
Right.
So they would come up with some agreement of what things mean and they would just go at each other. So I started sending super chats to JFG and telling him, I think at first I wanted to make them aware of this kind of controversial Catholic guy that's on the internet named E. Michael Jones. I listened to quite a few E. Michael Jones interviews, and I've even read some of his books. And, he's not my favorite guy in the universe, but he's taught me a lot. And the position he comes from has a lot of valid and legitimate points, even if I'm not going to, go join my local parish from listening to so many E. Michael Jones interviews. There's a lot that I appreciate him. I do like him, even though there's some wonkiness to him, right? So I was trying to let these guys know because it seemed like where they were at, because they would have white nationalists on to argue with each other about things. Like one of the biggest things that happened, you know who Sargon of Akkad is?
I've heard the name, but I don't know.
So now his real name isn't Sargon of Akkad. I can't think of his name. It's something Owen, or it's funny. It's Owen something. But him and Richard Spencer had an argument where Sargon of Akkad just ripped into Spencer and handed him his ass. And that kind of blew the whole thing up, So just the idea of it being popular was already tinted in a bad way for Normieville, Normieville's like, what? You mean they let Richard Spencer on to talk? That's horrible. Like, and a lot of people believe that that's true, that he should not have a platform no matter what. And obviously I don't agree with that. And I also think, I think very little of Richard Spencer across the board, like just not doesn't have any points that I can give any credit to at all, which is rare. Usually I can give somebody, at least throw him a bone, but not that guy. But I challenged JFG to debate flat earth, and he immediately said yes. And I'm thinking, oh shit, what have I done to myself? What am I doing? So, that feeling of like, oh, I thought I wanted to do this, because the chat had been blowing up for weeks and months. Flat Earth win. They were really hammering Worski and JFG. When you guys going to talk about it? Because they were avoiding it. They were ducking it. And so, long story short, I talked them into doing it on April Fool's Day so that we could screw with the mutual audience.
That's
And
great.
on April Fool's Day, what was it? 2018? I'm not even positive when it was. I might have to go look. Um, we had a nice debate, and I would say JFG he's got a doctorate in genomics or whatever. Like he's a really smart guy. He's got a high IQ. He's a little bit autistic maybe, but he handed me my ass pretty good. But I used the strategy, not even on purpose, to think of it as imperturbability or unfuckwithability, but I wanted to go and enjoy myself and have a good time and not really care, bring all my points, let people examine them, bring ideas forward, and give them the opportunity to look, but not be attached to the idea that I was going to win. And I studied hard and tried to get ready. And about 3 days before the thing, I gave up. Like, I'm giving up on this. This guy's going to kick my ass. He's a trained debater from college, and I am not. And it went great, man. We had a great time. And one of my secrets that I had was that if things went well, I was going to ask them if they would let me grab my guitar and play the song about flat Earth that I wrote. It's called, well, people call it Turtles All the Way Down because that's the popular chorus to the song, right? And so they did, and like at the end, we've got like the chat's blowing up, and everybody's like, "Hey, this is pretty good." And like JFG had a pizza pan, and he was slapping it like a tambourine,
No.
And so the debate still, it's not up there. The original channel's gone, but it's out there. You can find it. Well, once again, for the third long story short, my friend Jim Maiden, was the one who hosted this whole experience in his basement, helped me set up a place to do it where it was functional, because you kind of have to have something like a production studio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my art production studio here, and I'll be honest, it's getting kind of chilly. Usually I'm moving around, so you have to have
Right.
a space to do things. Just
You
like
do.
here, on the other side of where you're sitting, if we put a big mirror behind you, we'd see a lot of cables and a lot of microphones and a lot of monitors and probably like 3 computers and a laptop and a tablet and 2 smartphones, or
Right.
all that stuff. There's a huge production that goes into this, so we needed space. And Jim not only hosted me, but he really helped me to get ready. Like, he opted in as my friend to do this. Well, when it was all over, by next week, Jim's like, "Bro, I got the live streaming bug. We got to do something. We got to do that again." And so we just agreed that we weren't going to overthink it and try and get into a big production mindset where you paralyze yourself with the analysis of planning and organizing. And we just literally said, screw it. And on my YouTube channel, we just said, we're going to push the button and go live. And we started doing that every Wednesday. And we called it a variety show, because I would play with the yo-yo and play the guitar and sing, and Jim would play the piano, and sometimes he would sing along, and he could juggle. And so then we would just bring up random topics and talk. And we did that for lots and lots of episodes. And we started to court people for interviews, just people that we knew personally, no big names or anything. But Tracy Twyman is a very well-known, may she rest in peace. That's the lady that passed away. She's a very well-known occult author. And me and Jim had both found her stuff and signed up for her, paywall content, so that we were part of what she called the Plus Ultra Club. Plus Ultra Syndicate was the name of her paid content. And we were courting her for an interview, and she was having a lot of trouble of being harassed and hassled online in like kind of a, what do you call it, targeted individual type of way, And she was even getting some targeted individual stuff happening in real life. And so we went out of our way to make sure that she knew that we understood the position that she was in, and that we wanted her to know that we were real people and that we weren't very far away. We were only like 3-4 hours from where she was living. And so she agreed to come on and do some interviews. And of course, you know how it is, technical difficulties almost bombed the thing the first time. I literally was holding my smartphone up to the microphone for the first interview because we couldn't get her on the line with Skype, or back then it was the Google product, whatever it was. But I think Zoom was just barely coming out, and we couldn't get her in there. And so I just held the phone up in front of the microphone, and we interviewed her that way. And we were elated, like, oh, that's amazing. And so we asked her if she wanted to come back. And so a couple weeks later, she agreed to come back, and it went great, And so we're like, oh, that's cool. And so then, you know how it is, when the show ends, usually you stay on the line for a minute and have a little behind the scenes powwow, talk about how things went and stuff like that. And she's like, can I just join your guys' thing and come every week? you know, is that okay if I just join your team? And of course, we're like, you know, like you actually write books and do research and are published and have fans. You know, we're just two dumbasses pushing go live and juggling and talking on the microphone and playing
awesome,
with a yo-yo. And
so
so she
good.
joined us for a long, long time, you know, and then she tragically passed away. And we tried to continue the show for quite a few episodes after that, and we did succeed. You know, we kept going, and we just talked about how things were going, and we had guests still. And there came a point when I realized I was really just phoning it in, and I wasn't myself. And I caught myself. It's that awareness we've been talking about. You know, like, oh, I'm faking this, because I can do that. I can front pretty hard. You know, even if I did a lot of performing live music when I was younger, and so rehearsals and especially even performances, you never know how the person you're watching perform is really feeling. They might be having the worst day of their life. They come out and still put on a great show for you, you know, and they might go immediately afterwards to go get completely drunk and high because they don't want to be in their body. They don't want to have the life that they have, you know. And I started to have that mild feeling like I'm phoning it in here. I'm fronting, you know. I'm not really being honest with myself or my audience. So I just quit, you know. And it was really hard on me and Jim, you know, I just, you know, me and Jim had some tensions and stress going on too, nothing real bad, but, you know, we had our own, you know, we lost someone in a really tragic, horrible way. So the fallout of death is not to be described or understood easily in any context, you know. And if someone allegedly kills himself and you're not even sure if you think that's true, it's just something we all have to sit with forever. It's never going to go away. This feeling is going to be here forever to some capacity. You can adjust around it and do healthy things to try to accept that it happened, you know, welcoming things once again, you know. Can I welcome the mystery of Tracy Twyman's death for the rest of my life? Yep, I can. You know, it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard. And so a young kid named David Barsky hit me up and asked if I wanted to start a new show. And I told him, there's just no way I can do that, man. I don't have the capacity. I really kind of went into my own kind of introverted space and did my own thing for probably a year, maybe more. And so he hit Jim up, and Jim said yes. And they started the Weaving Spiders Welcome. And it started off as more just like a typical banter and interview show. But somehow it kind of evolved or transformed on its own into this amazing symposium of people. We get more and more people, 3 people, 5 people, 8 people. And at first I wasn't even on there with them. I just knew it was going on and I would watch sometimes. And then I started showing up because, you know, people really wanted me to come back. You know, they wanted me and Jim back together doing something. And so I started to feel healthy and comfortable enough to do that. And as things developed, now if you tune in on Saturday nights, the Weaving Spiders Welcome, it's on the channel. It's called Weaving Spiders Webs because we had some technical difficulties with the first channel. So if you find the Weaving Spiders Welcome channel, there's a bunch of old episodes and good content on there. But if you want to catch the actual live stream on a Saturday night, it's on Weaving Spiders Webs on YouTube. And we have this ability, we call it a weave, and everyone is able to somehow it's like the opposite of internet blood sport. That's what I would call it. It's the inverse. It's the antithesis. You know, if blood sports was the thesis, somehow this idea that you can get, sometimes there's 12 people on the screen at once, Owen, and everyone will be able, you've seen it, you've been there, and you're welcome to come more often, man. We'd love to have you as we do featured guests sometimes for the first hour and a half, and then let it digress into the symposium, or sometimes we just throw the thing on and it just becomes whatever it becomes, you know. But we do like having people come. If you want to come talk about whatever you're doing, you're of course welcome, man. We'll make time to pencil you in on some Saturday night. But it's just become, it's like it's got this life of its own, and everybody honors it, and they bring all their synchronistic, esoteric, occult, conspiracy, you know, things that are outside the normal realm, health issues, science issues, you know, like we have Benjamin Balderson almost every week talking about his alchemical studies and things that he's doing in the lab versus things that he's studying or developing as a theory or a philosophy. And it just goes on and on, you know. We've got all these people on the Telegram channel, and it's just a huge, amazing blessing. And so like Chance from Interverse, Chance fell in love with the spiders and started showing up, and he pops in pretty often. And so then now you've got 2 pretty big audiences, you know, that overlap, you know, the Interverse audience and the Weaving Spiders audience overlap. And then you add the next guy or gal, whoever it might be. And now you've got, to me, it's like we've developed the most glorious Venn diagram ever, because you've got this weaving spiders thing, and then Chance already had his thing. He's been doing it. He's probably been doing it almost a decade. You got my most favorite in the world right now is Juan Ayala from the One on One podcast is killing. Or to quote Owen Benjamin, he's crushing these gentlemen, boys and girls. He's crushing all the time. And these guys, they tip their hat to us at Picture Show, because we would get on there with Tracy and talk about the craziest stuff. We were probably the ones to really start first diving into the idea of the anal birth of the homunculus, right? This idea that people, that they do weird sex magic, and of course it always lands on butt stuff for some reason. And that a lot of these magicians you'll find, like L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, for whatever reason, they got stuck with this idea that it comes from alchemy, that you can make a little man in a jar and have him do things for you. And there's lots of different definitions of a homunculus. Is the idea that you're creating this entity outside of yourself. Sometimes it manifests as a real thing. Sometimes it's more like an egregore, or forget the other name they call it in Asian magic when you
Tulpa.
Yeah, thank you, Tulpa. Yeah, exactly. All these, or servitor is another.
Or even a pendulum, I think, works in that
Yeah,
in
it
that,
is. Absolutely.
That blank space. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, there we're hitting on now that's the Venn diagram I'm talking about. Getting a little weave started here.
Yeah.
Is a pendulum a homunculus? My answer is yes, it definitely is. And so before you grab onto swing, think if you want to hug that homunculus or not is a good question to ask yourself. But so a lot of these guys, they appreciate and recognize that we started something that we were completely unaware of. Me and Jim were not confidently and arrogantly thinking that we're going to put on the RX Only Picture Show. We're going to get Tracy Twyman and she's going to become our team member, and we're going to break new ground in the realm of conspiracy and occult dialogue. Like, we weren't thinking that. We were literally juggling and playing with a yo-yo, eating pizza off camera, And
that's great.
And it's developed into this thing that all I can do is encourage people to check it out and see what they think, and to be as humble as I can be, because I'm dumbfounded by it. I feel so blessed. Literally met hundreds of people. People send me DMs all week, and I try to reply to everybody because I really, really care a lot in a healthy way. It's not me feeling yearning or needing or like I'm under pressure. It's not. It's a healthy, wonderful thing. Because
awesome.
To me, the biggest takeaway from all this stuff is if you get stuck in fear porn, conspiracy, or politics and all that stuff, if you can find that little spot where it breaks through to self-help of some kind, diet health, whatever, what you eat, how often you exercise and how you do it, what you believe about the science that you were taught versus about other sciences that are right there. They're right behind whatever you're looking at. And you can look at it and be like, oh, wow. Schoenhauer's water theories, or Walter Russell on electricity, even one step beyond Tesla, in my opinion, and on. They don't stop. There's endless information out there that, for whatever reason, the dams are breaking all over in the last 20 years, and this information is out there. The mainstream media and Normieville, whoever's in charge of Normieville doesn't like that their market share is getting sucked up like a sponge. So they are actively fighting it, and that's why you're seeing guys like Ye getting cut off on every interview he's on, and this kind of stuff, because there's people that have that feeling they're supposed to protect this thing, that they have something, they're attached to it in a big way, and they have to defend it, protect it, stop it from being damaged or encroached upon. In my opinion, that's not true. We can have an open market of ideas, and you'll know if someone's disingenuous and being hurtful or rude or evil. It's very obvious, in my opinion. You can get in touch with your emotions in yourself. It's not as easy to be Svengali by other people who have charisma, but you can tell that their heart's not in it, And so then you land in one of these groups. You find some little spot that's your own thing. Maybe it's Rogue Ways group, or maybe it's the False Reality Check, or maybe it's right here with the Blue Collar Mystics, or maybe it's all those, and one is good this season and next season it's that one, and I watch these guys in the summer and these guys in the winter, and these guys late at night and these guys early in the morning, and it's amazing, man. I don't know what my life would be without it right now. It's a trip.
Yeah, it is, man. I appreciate it, the affiliations and just meeting different people with different ideas and discoveries. I mean, I'm just looking through the page, the the new one, and it's got everybody's, you know, kind of different pages put underneath, like Gordy and Gabe, Slick Dissident, and Chance, yourself, Alan Marcus, all these folks, and it's really cool because I've talked to all these different folks, heard what they've got to say, what their different perspectives are, what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And it's
Alan, I'm
all
glad you
featured.
mentioned Alan Marcus, because he's really become an instrumental part somehow. And people don't know Alan's been on the internet since way, way back. He's one of these guys that's intentionally allowed himself to be sleepy on these topics. What did we to idle his power level, because he was on live streaming and YouTube and other platforms way back. And so he, even though he's subtle and has a really beautiful, dry sense of humor, he's very knowledgeable, and he's a trained production expert, specialist kind of a guy. You know, he knows what's up. So much talent, man.
Yeah.
So if you're a venture capitalist and you're listening to this, you got to just parse this off. I mean, if 10 grand's all you got, that's fine. But if you give us $100,000, you can see some sparks fly. If you got a couple million, we'll change the world for you for fun. We won't have any expectations or outcomes that we're trying for. We'll just take what we're already doing and we'll magnify it, and you'll be happy.
I mean, like, dude,
the best money I ever spent, you'll say.
Honestly, yeah, I can't keep up with the discoveries that are just constantly coming out. I mean, you get, because I was talking about the Enneagram a while ago. It's something that I'm really passionate about. Then I see, you know, Gabe Slick Dissidents talking to Chance about it, and he's got all these different things that he's learned that have nothing to do
another
with
big one, man.
You know, information that I had, you know, and then he's building off of that. So we're all standing on each other's shoulders, and
we are the giants somehow.
Yeah,
we're standing on our own shoulders, you know, like it's a pyramid all the way up of people that are helping. We're getting somewhere. That's why it's working. Something's happening that you can't really wrap words around it. You just got to jump in and see. You find some little piece that's for you, and your life will start to change in a way that's not you pushing or forcing. You know, things come. You can do absolutely nothing at all. And if you believe that the whole world is required to dump everything that's supposed to be yours in your lap, you just have to sit there. And the world is obliged to accommodate you. And we were trained and taught the opposite, because they want us in this mindset of want. You know, I want to put on some deodorant in case a girl thinks I smell stinky or whatever, you know, like endless marketing strategies of that kind of stuff, when it's not true. The world is absolutely abundant. All the bad things they're saying in Normieville media can easily be minimized or even outright disproven. And if you just notice that you're breathing and wait, something fucking great will happen.
Man, I love that. Yeah. And I love that, you know, the way that this all kind of happened was truly organic for you guys. Because so many times I think we sit down and we intentionally try to force something to go, and then it doesn't ever seem to go quite like that. Right. Like, I've done a lot of production stuff too. And there is an element of of pushing, and there you have a sprint and you need to get certain things done. And that's all well and good. But like, when it's something that's truly collaborative and really actually organic, like, it feels so much better, because you're going to accomplish something that's even bigger than you even ever first set out to do. And all these other people get to be a part of it, and they're along for it, and they get to grow, and it just becomes something that's so much better than you could have orchestrated yourself.
You're here.
You know,
makes me happy that we didn't actually work out 15 beats, because we talked about that.
Yeah.
Not that I'd be against it. I got a challenge for you. We'll have to come back and watch this together in a private stream and record it and see if we can pick out the beats. They're here.
Oh yeah, they're definitely here. Yeah. And I love the 15 beat sheet thing. That's one of my favorite ways to sort of map out the actual story. But like, I've been learning a lot of different story tools lately. That's really where my head's at, is learning this, learning to speak and learning to tell stories and write stories, you know, because I think that's the best way to kind of bring information or ideas to someone. We talked a lot about, here, watch this documentary about how everything is fake, and how and the takeaway from that. Instead, here's a compelling story. I don't know what it's about, or maybe it's about a certain thing, but that story is embedded in there. And now this person might have the curiosity to follow their own knows, right? And figure out what's next. And I think that's a better approach for
well, it's the natural way that we function, and that's why they use it against us so effectively. That's why the pendulums work, because the pendulum doesn't come out of the bushes and be like, hey, look at me, I'm a big golden pendulum. You know, it comes as a story that's really seductive. There's something about it, or it's really repellent. I don't want that thing near me, you know. And either one of those reactions is a clue that you're getting fished in, you're getting some attachments, you know, or aversions started. And if you don't notice, then you might be in for the ride of your life, right? You know,
that's right.
That might be okay. Really, everything's okay. That's why surrender is the key. There's a great interview I recommend to people, Owen, as this, his name's Marty Edelstein, I think. I never even read his book. He wrote a book called The 3-Minute Therapist, but the interview was on a show called the Plant Yourself Podcast about whole foods, plant-based diets. And this guy just does really good podcast interviews, mostly focused on that stuff, you know, people that are transitioning away from animal products and not going vegan because they love animals so much, but because they really want a health outcome that's different than whatever they're experiencing, you know. Mm-hmm. But Marty, pretty sure it might be Michael Edelstein, but his main thing that I really took away from it was the difference between having a list of demands that you're imagining or using as the foundation for your life versus changing that, the subtle difference to changing that to having high preferences. And he pointed out that having an actual list of demands, like so many people do, is false. It's false. I don't get to demand that this interview goes well. I don't get to demand that the technology functions, that the interview can happen at all. I'm not able to demand it. It's false. I can't say that I insist. It's just stupid. You don't get to insist on anything. You know, if I can keep sucking air and make it to this evening, I'm doing great. But I can't demand that even. There's no guarantee, you know. And so if you can change it to a high preference, catch yourself making demands. I demand that Trump isn't the president. I hate him. He's not my president. Well, yeah, can't demand, but you can have a really high preference that you don't want to see, look at, talk to, or be around Trump or any of his followers. But if they're around, you can't demand that they all go away.
Right.
You can just really choose that your preference is the opposite of what you're experiencing and that you'd really prefer that they change, you know. And man, that helped me so much to realize that, because I already kind of practiced that anyway. But we all have demands, you know. It seems like me and you both have I have a pretty high preference for keeping a beard. Your beard looks great, by the way. It looks really good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, man. I look
if someone demands I'm going to shave, then I'm going to fight. You know?
Right. Right. We're going to throw down.
But if they hold me down and shave my face, then I'm going to have to accept it. I can't immediately grow a full beard again. You know, I can just have a high preference for keeping my face covered up like this. You know,
totally.
To me, I look silly now when I shave it. So.
Yeah, I definitely do. I look like an egg if I shave it, you know, because I don't have any hair up top either, you know. So, like, I'm satisfied with this look because I got like kind of the Nintendo Wii avatar, you know, sort of.
Yeah, that's funny. Going. I feel the same way, man. I feel the same way. Like there's something about, you know, change my hat, you know. I can't believe I see. I have a high preference that I have another hat nearby so I can literally change, but I don't have one.
Dude, that's man. No, this is so good and helpful. I just want to say thanks to everybody who's watching, and like I think this is such a really important topic right now, and something I want to drill down to. And I've had a real opportunity to over the past couple of weeks. And I think that we'll probably continue to have an opportunity to through the next few weeks and on and on. So, man, I really appreciate
especially with your car situation. I'm sure that, you know, it's funny to have something as simple as hitting a deer turn into like, that's what I love about these processes is that everything, if you choose to allow it, turns into a deep spiritual, philosophical learning and growing experience. And you know, you don't want to think that changing the cat box or doing the laundry can be the aha moment. You know, you want the aha moment to be like on the mountaintop with Jesus or something. But if you're open to it, it could be almost anything. You know, the lady stepping on your foot at the post office might change your life forever. You know,
it's true. Yeah. You might like talk to her and then if you can keep your head on your shoulders, who knows, that might lead to her introducing you to someone who
That's right. If she has to
could change
replace
your life.
those Yeezys, then the next thing you know, you've known each other for 5 years and now you're in business together. It's
That's
possible.
right.
That kind of stuff happens all the time.
It happens all the time. It's just a matter of us.
People become best friends from fighting,
Mhm. It's true. It's true. It does happen. Yeah. And we just need to be able to be present, be in the moment, be observing, and remember, like, yeah, the end is already decided, and that's okay. That is what it is. So we should try and enjoy this moment as much as possible. I try to remember that myself. It's easy to get discouraged when you have certain goals, but again, it goes back to that idea of preference and allowing, letting go, allowing. And
if it
like,
gets to be 6 months and you still don't have a car, it's going to be really easy to be really pissed off about it.
Totally, man.
But
but like,
it might be also be that you're going to get a Range Rover, and God's seeing if you're patient enough to get it.
right, totally, exactly.
I hope so.
Oh, I love this. Ria says the synchronicity. OMG. Much love. That's awesome.
I wasn't looking at the chat. I only kept StreamYard open. So I love everybody who's watching, and I really appreciate it. I just had that feeling to not multitask.
Right.
Because I love talking to you. That's why. I think me and you could talk for 10 hours.
I think we could. I think we could too, man. I really do too. I checked back and forth with it a couple times, but wanted to really stay engaged as well. And I appreciate everybody for being here live. You guys are amazing, and many, many blessings to you. Shannon's here. She's, connected to a lot of these groups and people, and, Becky, Gordy's in the chat. I see, just a lot of awesome.
Yeah, what's up, Gordy?
Awesome folks. Kevin, I just linked a little Enneagram thing with Beatrice Chestnut. She's one of the foremost on that. If you start that video about 18 minutes in, because the first 18 minutes.
I think you sent me that and I haven't watched it yet. I'm glad you brought that up, man.
It's really good. She does a great job of explaining where it comes from and how Claudio Naranjo got in so much trouble for writing a book about it in the 70s, and why it's not really focused on as a psychological tool. It's more focused on as a spiritual and storytelling tool, even though it truly does have a psychological basis and background. Gurdjieff actually was obsessed with the Enneagram. He said he would make whole libraries useless. And so
he claimed that he's the one that brought it out from the whirling dervishes or something, right?
Ah, okay. Well, that doesn't surprise me.
I think he's the one that he took. Now it's Gurdjieff. So, if you want to believe that everything that Gurdjieff says he gets to take credit for is true, then you need to study Gurdjieff a little bit more, in my opinion. He's a tricky ass fool,
Yeah, he is, definitely.
And I love him, but I mean, he according to his biographers and the stuff that's out there about him, he did all that stuff on purpose, which to me, that's a hard next step. I took all these years from, like I said, having a tragic, shitty, toxic romance end in the worst possible way other than death in prison, and realize somewhere in the middle of all that I'm becoming a Svengali jerk. I'm becoming a narcissistic asshole who's moving people around, strategizing and using NLP and everything else I can get my hands on to try to defend myself from my horrible wife, and also get everyone to do what I want them to do. So to come full circle to be like, oh, but I can go back and intentionally be the trickster manipulator, but in a heartfelt, honest way. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, but that's a clue to me that there might be some truth in it. If you're uncomfortable with something, what, there's this, I was going to leave you with one more thing, and it keeps coming right to me and almost missing. Oh, it was Owen Benjamin. I don't know how much you watch Owen Benjamin. I hadn't been watching him for like 2 years. I just got sick of the whole, black guy stole my bike songs. It just got old on me, but, so I tuned back in recently, and I've been enjoying it, and it's pretty funny and good. But I tuned in right around the time that he went off on the Apostle Paul, and he kind of like, I don't know if people know or not, but Paul, some people think Paul is like a Jewish shill, like the first, disinformation agent, that they sent in, that the Pharisees sent their guy in. And if you compare Paul's writings to Jesus's actual words in the Bible, there's definitely some points of pretty serious divergence. To me, they all go together. Like, everything's useful in its time and place, and it doesn't have to make sense in a linear, logical way, because that's not what these scriptures are for. They're for your benefit when the time is right for them to benefit you. That's the way I look at it, you know. But I was thinking it might be that Owen Benjamin has the best opportunity in his life right now spiritually to learn more from studying the Apostle Paul than he could ever possibly imagine. But he's got such massive FU aversion about it that, and I mean, who's going to tell him? You know, I mean, if he watches this show, Owen, there's a chance he could, you know, humbly sit down, pray, and crack it back open, and maybe there's something else there for you. But I don't think anyone's going to send him this interview, and if they do, I really doubt he's going to watch it, because he's Owen Benjamin. He's kind of blustering, 6 foot plus, over the top, you know, a bit of an asshole, you know.
Yeah, he is.
That's what people like about him, you know.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely bullish in that sense. But yeah, he's done a lot of good work. I love that. Really good closing thoughts. Yeah, and just appreciate you, all you're doing.
Yeah, I love you, man. I really appreciate the offer to come, and I think we kind of kept this thing consistent the whole time. It really is about imperturbability. To close it up good, you know, is just what I just said. You know, Owen Benjamin's imperturbability is weak with the Apostle Paul in the last few weeks or a month or whatever. Like, he gets triggered. He even kept saying, "I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm not going to talk about it anymore." Right? So there's something there. If you find that your perturbability is up in an area, the brave thing to do is to mount up some of your courage and acceptance for it, and go at it knowing that it might blast you apart. It might crush you, you know. Chance tells that story about his shamanic journey experience, that whatever happened in the vision quest that he had, that he went out in the ocean and the sharks ripped him limb from limb, right?
Dismemberment.
Like, yeah, scary.
Yeah.
But I think he said then the monkeys came and put him back together or something. So, you know, it's good to know in advance if you think you're willing to take it that far. At an emotional, philosophical level, you know, can you accept that you might need to be ripped to shreds? That's what I dove off of my ivory tower, and my life was actually pretty good when my relationship fell apart and went bad, but it was a farce. That's why I love Admiral Hitz, because he talks about, man, you know, lose your lover to death, your house burns down.
Yeah, dude.
And be able to say, that's what I needed to know to be in the place that I needed to be.
Yeah, man.
You know,
that dude.
It's hard to be open to it, but if you can be open, even you don't have to decide that you're open to losing loved ones or to violent catastrophe. You don't have to be that open. Might happen anyway. But if you can be open even to the smallest step in that direction, it will. The sets will change. At first it might be horrible. Like, I don't like this at all. But if you continue to be patient, another pendulum will come by and another pendulum will come by. And eventually you'll find something that makes you feel renewed and good and different. And like, oh, I made it. I've arrived somewhere new. And the old, you know, like me and you both having big problems come at us. It's like, oh, it's because we grew up a lot bigger and more faster than we thought we did. And now we got fucking CEO problems.
Right, exactly.
Like, okay.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm scared.
But
it's like, no, step up, man. It's time, you know, face it, you know, better, you know, better us than, you know, somebody else. It's like, you know, I was talking to my friend, I was telling him, you know, just about going out, getting beat up, you know, having tough times and stuff on stage. He's like, good that you're taking the beating, you know, and not somebody else. They don't have to do it. You know, you go out there, you do the thing. And that was really encouraging. Those reframes are so helpful.
Talk about your stage performance. That's really good to be able, because having a friend in the audience, when you said that, it gave me that, like, because I bombed. You know, invite a hot girl to an open mic and then go forget the lyrics or get too drunk and nervous and blow it. You know, like
exactly. Yeah, I mean, fortunately, that friend of mine, he's seen me do well too. You know, but it was just you know, it was just bad. It was like, oh, this is not. This one sticks. But it's that emotion too that I'm like, okay, well, this makes me want to, like, I need to develop from here. I can shift my approach and you know, tweak it a little bit, and I have a really good something that I definitely don't want to have happen again. It's a good motivator. Yeah, and I'll soon have a car too. That'll be a whole thing. But this is such a timely lesson. I hope everybody's I hope everybody's doing great. Much love, and I know everybody's going to start traveling and stuff throughout the holidays. Hit me up, shoot me a message, hop in our Telegram chat. Let's keep discussing. I want to connect with more and more of the folks that you're affiliated with, and hit up Sean on
I'll
Twitter
share this
as well.
thing out more once it's wrapped around to just being a file. I did drop it out on the social medias, and I'll say something really in closing this time, that I think everyone that are in these groups already. So if you're already involved in one or more of all these groups, we all have this sense of fear of missing out, overwhelm. Like, oh, I didn't listen to enough. Like I was going to try to listen to 2 episodes of your show before we did this. I mean, of course I didn't do it. God only knows what I did listen to instead. You just slipped my mind,
Sure, it happens.
And right. And I would say, if you want to practice what we were talking about this whole show, just start right there. Every time you have that feeling like, oh man, chance is on, I'm going to miss it. Oh, the spiders are on. I'm going to, whatever situation it is, just welcome it instead. Like, welcome missing it. Like, oh, I'm not going to catch chance live. I welcome it. It's okay. See if you can accept it. If you can't, then go tune in, But
Absolutely.
I do it all intuitively now.
Yeah.
All my media content is all like, people, it's like a bird drops it in my lap, something happens. I find a history bookmark, something, cassette tape falls out of my golf bag. Not really, that's a joke, but.
But yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And that's part of it. That's part of the process too. I welcome it. And in fact, I mean, there are times, you go out there and bomb on purpose, but I wasn't doing that the other night though. Right.
Right.
Like it's when you do, but
I understand that ought to be a strategy. Cause I mean, that's
part of it.
Chris Cornell talk about that one time. He said, when you realize the audience doesn't like you, there's an opportunity there. This was a long time ago. And I loved the idea of, an audience not liking Soundgarden and Soundgarden deciding that they also don't fucking like you. I wish I could have been, this could have been very entertaining for me as a heavy metal singer guitar player. Like, I want to see Kim Thale deciding that the audience doesn't need to enjoy him at all. I would appreciate that, so I get it,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. But I think that's a really good place to stop. Just let people know I do have some links in the show notes, everybody. Like, check out our Twitter, everything, or check out
I changed my name to my Twitter handle. If people are over there, I love Twitter. It's a riot since Elon bought it. It's really different. They kind of let all the convicts out of jail, so it's hilarious. I mean, if you've got thick skin, if you don't, then maybe not sign up yet. Wait a little while until
that's a great way to
settles down.
Test your triggers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want to see if you could be triggered, you can always create a Twitter account and just go start following lots of people and see what happens. But I can't really recommend that unless, it's kind of like bombing on purpose. That would be the same. But yeah, we're live Weaving Spiders Welcome on Saturday nights. We do a show on Wednesday nights. It's called Flow State, where usually if the show is going according to plan, we create art as a group. Like, everybody has their own little art projects, like I make these little things like this. These are wax, but usually I'm working out of clay and putty stuff. Like, I make a bunch of little faces and stuff usually. But people draw, paint, whatever they're working on, doing leather tooling, and we take turns reading at the same time. And that's why it's Flow State. This is something we started with Tracy Twyman. Jim Maiden had a class in college that it was called Reading and Sculpting or something like that. Was the course. It was the real coursework in college. So they would take turns reading in class and sculpt at the same time, and it activates both sides of the brain. So then you have the opportunity. We all want to be in the zone, the flow state, where all of a sudden you're no longer thinking or feeling about anything. You're just doing what you're doing, and somehow it's going perfectly. It's going great. Like Michael Jordan dunking the ball on people with his tongue waggling out is the best example that comes to mind, And so we do that every Wednesday, usually wait till Chance is done with his show. He does a Wednesday live stream. And that's the main places that I'm on right now because of this legal bullshit. I took a job that I used to work, and I actually talked to my old boss into letting me work out of my shop. So you can see I'm working as an artist right now for money. And so my availability on other things that would have usually been plugged at this time, I mean, if you really feel like something hit you and and you need to hit me up, I'm on all the platforms. You can find me sbalger.com. I'll gladly talk to you, but I don't really have anything on the offer right now except for I wasn't working 40 hours a week for like 2 years. So it's a mind blowing trip to be beholden to a schedule, like be in production and get shit done. And yeah, I'm at my house. So that's a mind fuck.
Well, thanks for taking the time to hang out with us. We really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I'll come back anytime, man. You got to get over and hang out on the spiders and tell us what you've been up to, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Rafting and stand up and how this is going and writing books, recording audios and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I got to get back to it. I got to record some more audiobooks. I got a couple that I have recorded, one I need to edit, a couple that I need to record and all that stuff too. Yeah, you guys.
I've always meant to do that. So I want to talk inside baseball sometime with you about that. Cause I see you as being massively successful at something I've always imagined that I would do. And I've got all the gear. It's sitting in a room over there. I just, you know how it is, just overthinking it, oh, I need to buy a hard drive and it's already been 2 years. Like, why didn't you buy it? What's going on?
Yeah, man, I can definitely shortcut you some time with it because I've been through the entire process.
Because your stuff is good. If you guys aren't listening to Owen's audio stuff, you just need to ask him for a sample. Because I don't know if you've got anything published right now that's up there on Audible. I've
got a couple things on Audible. I've got a couple of older books that are sort of public domain. They're rewrites. I did As a Man Thinketh and made it As a Human Thinketh. So it's like neutral as far as like the gender or whatever. And then did the same thing with Ralph Waldo Emerson's book. Because you have to do something different on Amazon if you're going to publish an older work. You have to somehow tweak it or whatever. So I went through and just changed all the like pronouns to just you and they and them and all that kind of stuff to where
I've always meant to do that with The Secret Garden. Like I always thought to make The Secret Garden into a story like a little black Muslim girl or something, just change it up,
Yeah,
or
change
somebody
it up.
with a disability, somewhere they get some representation. I know that people on the left make too big of a deal of it, so then people become repulsed. But it's true, if you're missing your right foot and there's a person in the story that doesn't have a right foot, there's something there that you can't get that anywhere else. And so,
absolutely. And it was a great opportunity to try something different. And then on our just regular YouTube channel, guys, if you don't know, I got a bunch of audiobooks. I got The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I've got The Kabbalion and several other Ralph Waldo Emerson's and As a Man Thinketh. So many cool books that I've done that are just
Scholar Mystics.
Yeah, that's just on the YouTube page. There should be a whole entire playlist of just audiobooks that are there. And I tried not to advertise on the audiobooks, because it's like super fucking distracting to try to listen to an audiobook with a bunch of ads in it.
Right.
But yeah, if you guys check out, they got stuff on the podcast as well that's on the RSS feed as far as audiobooks, and I may add another one or two over the holidays there as well. So I'm looking at doing a couple new ones too. So definitely, and I have room for a client or two. So if you guys are interested in working with somebody to help you accomplish your goals, I am available somewhat. I'm not doing like some massive group or anything like that, but I could take a client or two.
Yeah, see, I didn't think about that. I can just pay you to consult, then it makes it easier for us to book and get it done.
Hey, we can do it, man. I'm more than happy to help you. And
I mean that dead seriously, because it's easy to be friends and hang out and say, hey, will you tell me that stuff? But if I say, hey, what's your rate? How much for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you can tell me, then it's easy. I can either say, oh yeah, I can do that, or oh hell, I can't afford that. Hold on, give me a couple weeks.
Well, man, I'd love to help you and make it. Maybe can. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I think I could shortcut you and help you and just show you here's how you do it kind of thing. I haven't done it in a while. I haven't really published anything since last spring, but wintertime is my time to do this.
Nice.
Because I'm just in the house more. It's about to be dark in 20 minutes,
Right.
So there's really not a whole lot of other stuff going on. So I'm thinking of making a dream yoga book happen. And I got to make an audio book into an actual book that's kind of like a workbook that I'm going to publish on Audible here at some point during the winter. So yeah, man, I'd love to do that. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you. And we will see you soon.